Today on the Bone Barrel Podcast, we get a foot in the door in the first of a two-part discussion of the Shoe Fetish Slayer, Jerry Brudos. Then, we double book a stay at 476 Barbary for our review and breakdown of Barbarian. It's all here on the Bone Barrel Podcast.
Welcome, Misfits and all things horror, to another episode of the Bone Barrel Podcast with your hosts, me, Richard Jones, and
myself, Brian Almeida.
It's been a shorter time, I'm going to say, between this episode and the last episode, Brian.
Yeah, I guess that's something that we should address because we talked about that at the end of the very first episode that we were going to do these shows bi-weekly, and it just hasn't happened that way in any capacity.
It's been more weekly. One time it was once in 2 months because of editing issues and vacations and stuff like that.
Yeah, this whole thing has been a learning process and just life in general. You know, I'm a single dad. I'm raising 3 kids. You know, we get sick. Not only learning how to edit the podcast, but certainly learning how to integrate it into my life, producing it, has been a whole learning experience. But
after, not having an episode out in April in time, we had a blessing. Brian got sick and was able to edit a whole episode in like 4 days.
Oh my gosh, Richard, that was awful. That was awful. So I got sick on April 20th on Easter. I got sick the night before or the day before. I think it was a couple days before, actually. So I got sick around the 18th of April, and we had already finished recording the last episode. And come Easter, I was dying, but I didn't want to call into work because it's Easter and there's no way they're going to believe that I'm legitimately sick. So I went
since it's 420.
Well, sure, it's Easter, it's 420. I guess I didn't really think much about the 420 thing, but certainly they know that I have kids and stuff. And for me to, call in, oh, guys, I don't feel well on Easter, they would have been like, bullshit. And so I just didn't. I went to work. I made it about 5 hours. I got home that night. My folks had already taken the kids. They were taking them overnight that evening because I had the next day off already anyway. Yeah. And it was Easter and I was supposed to work. So now I'm sick. I come home. I have no kids. Dude, I can't fucking sleep. I'm trying to lay down. I'm trying to lay down like on my side, at an angle, like propping myself up, and I'm so congested and so much nonsense in my chest. I can't breathe. That first night especially, dude, I remember at one point I couldn't breathe trying to sleep, and I just got up and stood there for a second like, what do I do with myself?
You know what I mean? Stance?
Yeah. I was like hands on my hips, just like what am I gonna do? And
then you start doing the production from oh my god, what's it called? Oh my god, what's that one movie? Where it opens up a party house basically because his parents are away.
House Party?
Is that it?
Yeah. Or wait,
where he slides in, singing "This Old Time Rock and Roll."
Risky Business.
Risky Business.
Yeah.
You started doing a risky business bit in your kitchen.
For sure. My kid was just showing me a meme on YouTube, a Risky Business meme. That's funny. I've never seen Risky Business. Have you?
Neither have I.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's apparently
if you
a
haven't
classic.
seen it, that's an old movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of movies that I haven't seen. I only just recently saw The Goonies this last year.
Ooh.
The first time, yeah.
Don't tell anybody
Sacrilege.
that.
Yeah, I know. Not cool. Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, what am I, my mom and my sister were the ones showing me media when I was a kid. Why the fuck didn't they show me the Goonies? By the time I grew up, I didn't give a shit.
Anyway, Brian, we should get into something real.
Yeah, I agree.
Welcome to Real Horrors, where we cover true crime and all things truly horrible. I got an interesting one for you today.
I'm excited for this one.
So to our listeners, this is going to be a 2-parter. We're covering the Shoe Fetish Slayer, Brian Almeida. So we're covering the Shoe Fetish Slayer, Jerome Henry, also known as Jerry Brudos.
Jerry.
Jerry Brudos.
Why'd you do it, Jerry?
So, Brian, this one's going to be close to home, too, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So you'll see what I mean.
Okay.
Not the shoe fetish. Anyway.
I don't have a shoe fetish.
Anyway. Brudos was born January 31st, 1939. He was an American serial killer and necrophile.
What is a necrophile?
We'll get to it.
Okay.
He was known as the Shoe Fetish Slayer, who committed many kidnappings, rapes, and murders of 4 young women between the years of 1968 and 1969 in Salem, Oregon.
Right next door to us.
Yep.
Have you ever been to Salem?
Yep. That's why I said close to home.
Okay.
Brudos was born in Webster, South Dakota. He was the younger of 2 sons born to Marie Eileen and Henry Irvine Brudos. Henry's mother had wanted her second child to be a girl. So when Jerry was born, she would emotionally abuse and belittle Jerry.
Okay.
She wouldn't even make it a secret. She would literally tell it to his face. I didn't want a boy. I wanted you to be a girl.
Wow.
You're a disappointment.
That's awful. Some parents end up like that. Some parents, they hoped and prayed for a boy, or they hoped and prayed for a girl, and they don't get that, and then they have a hard time letting go.
And a little
of
bit of
that.
resentment.
Resentment, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
So meanwhile, his mother, Marie, would show massive affection to her older son, Larry.
Okay.
So the Brudos family lived a very modest and pious life. Brudos' father did a lot of seasonal work.
Sure.
He had multiple jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So because of this, he would move the family around a lot. Brudos' father, Henry, wasn't necessarily abusive. He was short-tempered, whereas Marie was a harsh, matriarchal, and prudish individual.
Mm-hmm.
And she
she was super stuck up.
Yep.
Total
And-
Karen.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And she reserved the majority of her denigration for her younger son.
Mm-hmm. So she loved the older son because she probably wanted the oldest to be a boy.
Yep.
But now that the
The second one
child
wasn't
is
a girl.
here, she is going, okay, I've already got my son. I want a girl now. And she gets a second son.
Because of this,
and
yeah.
she's going, what do I need this?
Oh, Brian, just wait. You're
Okay.
gonna be amazed
Okay.
at this woman. So, as a direct result of the lacking maternal acceptance as a young child, Brudos formed a close friendship with a neighborhood woman, like, elderly woman down the street bakes you cookies or something, like, oh, here's a sweet treat for you, whatever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And he valued this as affection
Sure,
that
maternal.
he was not receiving at home.
Mm-hmm.
Brudos later confesses that he would occasionally fantasize that she was his mother.
Mm-hmm.
Because
sad.
she cared for him way more than his actual mother did.
So you said she was a stranger and she would bake for him?
Well, I mean, she was a stranger in the beginning. Like, how you don't know somebody. He just went over to her house, and she probably offered him, like, cookies or treat or something like that. Then the next day he came back.
And now this maternal void is being filled.
Eventually she started suffering from diabetes, declining rapidly.
So when does this take place right now, as he meets this woman?
So this is mid-40s.
Okay.
So he's like 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
Very young. So this is mid-40s. She suffered from diabetes, and her health declined rapidly to the point where she kind of had to stop having him or any other neighborhood children come and visit her.
Because she's sick now and she can't have...
And she can't have him over there anymore. And then shortly after this incident, one of his childhood female friends died of tuberculosis.
What I feel silly. What is tuberculosis again? Do you know?
It's an infection in your lungs. I think nowadays it's treatable, but back then...
Yeah, it's contagious, right?
It's highly contagious.
Oh, okay, and it affects other parts of the body like the spine and brain.
Yep, but it starts in the lungs.
Jeez, that's crazy. So not only does he lose this maternal figure because she's too sick and she can't have visitors anymore, she's dying. Now one of his good friends dies of tuberculosis.
Yeah, and at this point, Brudos is pretty inconsolable because he just lost...
Which, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think I am, it's totally curable nowadays.
Yeah.
So this is the 40s.
Yes.
This poor kid just dies. That's awful. Okay.
Yeah, she just died, and then shortly after that, the lady passed away too.
This woman that he grew to love is now gone.
So, Brudos was very sick. He had measles twice. He had laryngitis. He had 2... fungal infections that required surgery to be removed, and he ended up having chronic pain in the veins in his legs where it made it hard for him to walk. But he ended up getting that taken care of through surgery also, but it was all these things. And he also didn't have very many friends, and he frequently complained of throat pains and migraines. He typically achieved average grades, not terrible, but not also the best.
Totally just mid.
Yeah, opposed to his academically achieving popular older brother.
Oh, bummer.
He was like on a roll.
So
All
not
the
only
ladies
is he
loved
not
him.
good enough, but he's got this like huge shadow
Among his peers.
looming over him.
And among his peers, he's not good enough either.
Wow.
So in high school, Brudos remained an unremarkable individual to his fellow peers and teachers, and he rarely engaged in any extracurricular activities, although he was known to have been the secretary-treasurer of the youth club in his early teens.
Okay.
Because, his father did seasonal work.
Mm-hmm.
They
would move frequently.
They frequently moved, mostly around the Pacific Northwest, actually.
Okay.
So around our neighborhood. So Brudos harbored a lifelong shoe and foot fetish.
Okay.
His fascination for women's shoes and feet sourced from an incident when he was approximately 5 years old.
What happened? Some girl kick him in the nuts and tell him what a dirty boy he is, or what? What happened?
It was observing a teenage daughter of a family friend laying asleep on his bed, most likely babysitting, and she was starting not to feel very well. Brunos' parents was like, well, just go lay down on his bed. He was transfixed by the sight of her high-heeled shoes.
Like a golden light came down.
Like,
shown on
you just
them.
look, at those shoes. It's Dorothy with the ruby red slippers, anyway.
I wonder if he, sniffed them.
Well, he tried to pry them off her feet, and she woke up, obviously, and freaked out and told him to leave the room. Mm-hmm. That was an incident.
Get out of here, you little perv. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. On another occasion, at age 5, Brudos discovered a pair of leather high-heeled shoes with a rhinestone-studded clasp while exploring a local junkyard.
He's like, oh, shit. He's all looking around.
But first of all, Brian, a 5-year-old in a junkyard.
Yeah, what the heck? He's probably there by himself, too.
Child, just go
Yeah, just go on. Go play over there in the dangerous things. Go play in the toxic waste. Jeez. Go play in that old refrigerator.
The bomb shelter refrigerator.
Yeah.
Brudos took the shoes home and then slipped them on his feet to show his mother.
And this is the 40s. Her head probably exploded. What happened?
Imagine he comes in freaking
yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like,
strutted.
Mom, see how fabulous these look?
Like, yes, slay. Yeah. Anyway, well, in response, his mother shrieked at him that he was wicked.
You wicked, filthy child.
Oh, and I don't know if you have seen that movie lately, Brian, but there's a song called "Nobody Mourns the Wicked." Anyway.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen it.
I know you haven't.
Yeah, no.
Well, and she ordered him to remove the shoes and take them back to the junkyard. But he decided not to do that and hid them in his room. And then, and would constantly, every other day, put them on.
Go and, put them on and feel pretty. Okay.
Anyway, she discovered that he had them still, right? And she severely beat him.
With the shoes. That's what I would have done.
Before burning the shoes right in front of him in the backyard.
Oh my gosh. Jeez. And so now it's just cemented in his mind. He's like, this forbidden thing, I must have it. He's like Gollum with shoes.
2 years later, Brudos is now in the first grade. He attempts to steal the high heel shoes of his first grade teacher. Now, the reason why it's like, so I want you to think about this way. It's like, how would he steal her shoes? They're on her feet, she's at school. The teacher would bring 2 pairs of shoes to school, and it was known that she did this. She'd be wearing high heels first part of the day, and then halfway through the day, she would change into the tennis shoes. Mm-hmm. Because imagine wearing high heels.
Hear that
women will tell you it's painful after a while.
Big time.
But she wanted to look nice in the beginning of the day. So, but she would change her tennis shoes. So while she was outside of the room, Brudos took the high heels and hid them.
He's like, I want my butt to look good.
However, he was caught, and when he was, they asked him to say why he did it, and he claimed that he didn't know why. He just wanted to take them.
This poor kid. I know that I shouldn't be feeling bad for this murderer
or
whatever,
God.
But he was a child
Brian,
at the time.
when we start getting into it, you're gonna regret feeling bad.
I'm sure. I'm just saying at this point in his life, this poor little
Brian,
kid.
I'm gonna tell you when we get
and
into
it's the
it,
40s and
finally,
shit.
Part 2 is gonna be way worse.
Okay.
So by the time he was starting to hit puberty, Brudos. Sorry, I already can picture what you're gonna say. So that's making me laugh. So by the time he was starting to hit puberty, Brudos developed a fetish for women's underwear and lingerie.
Okay, like what? Wearing it? Or
No,
what?
but I knew that's what you were gonna say. 'Cause
Okay,
now
well,
you're
I'm
gonna be
just
like, now he's wearing high
the
heels and lingerie.
Yeah, because he's wearing the shoes.
He's
It's like,
doing
you know what would look
drag.
great with this?
This part's a little unsettling.
Okay.
So-
it hasn't been unsettling so far.
So, so Brutus was apparently introduced to this practice of viewing, fondling, and smelling female underwear by a fellow neighborhood boy who had several older sisters.
Whoa, that's not good.
They would sneak into the sisters' rooms together and perform these said acts. The brother,
Dude.
that's why I said it was.
He would smell their panties and shit. Like, what the
and
heck?
fondle them.
And now he's inviting this neighborhood kid. He's like, dude,
Hey,
you
wanna
want
do
some
it?
good shit?
Yeah.
You should come over. Dude,
The panty raid.
Yeah. Don't forget about the panty raid. You're talking about girls, right?
Yeah. Girls.
Eugene!
Mother! So, anyway, so this would cause the invocation of erotic feelings within him, which he initially failed to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody taught him about sex, the birds and the bees. His parents didn't tell him about
He's
it.
grossly unloved and neglected already. He has no real guidance in anything, much less.
like you said, he was on a farm, so a lot of his views of it came from farm animals.
Wow.
So now later into his puberty, Brudos had not learned about sex, like I said. He did, however, become obsessed with looking at his naked female peers.
Mm-hmm.
So does every other straight man.
Mm-hmm. But how old is he at this time?
Early high school.
See, because these things are perfectly normal, but when left unchecked, yeah, it can steer into some weird, potentially dangerous territory. Every heterosexual male growing up is like, oh, tits. Like, once they discover that, they're like, everything has changed. But certainly a kid like this that doesn't have the proper guidance and, like, love and communication about these things, like, he's totally set up for failure.
Yep.
Talk to your kids about sex.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Just get it out of the way.
Just do it. Just do it.
Make sure they're at an age where they understand, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't just go up to your 5-year-old and be like, this is how it works.
And I wouldn't even say that there's a set age that it has to be done. It's probably strictly, child by child case scenario.
If your kid asks you about it, don't feel nervous. Just talk about
it. It's something that happens, and it's going to happen, and they're gonna have sex someday, and you want them to have the proper information and let them know that they're supported. And fuck, I know I shouldn't be feeling bad for this guy. I'm just like, ugh, he just had no chance. Anyway,
it's nature versus nurture.
Yes,
but however, he had the choice to not do what he did.
That's true.
He was shy around girls in his neighborhood and school.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he would be obsessed with looking at them, he was shy, didn't feel confident talking to women,
Yep.
And he had severe acne.
So he doesn't have a lot of confidence.
Around 1953, Brudos was still oblivious to the acts of intercourse and began to dabble in masturbating.
Around 1953, huh?
However, he claimed that he was unable to finish the deed, if you know what I mean.
How old? He's a young man at this point.
Mm-hmm. 1953, so...
And he can't finish.
He's having issues like that while doing it himself.
Because I need fucking shoes and I need
Put
to be I need to be looking at this negligee while I'm wearing these fucking
high heels,
these stilettos. I get it, man.
As a teenager, though, he did experience frequent wet dreams. So whenever Brutus's mother discovered his sheets that were stained with the semen from his wet dreams, she would punish him severely and force him to wash his own sheets.
What the heck?
You nasty mother!
Dirty birdie! Jeez.
Brutus began...
No wonder his view of women is so twisted in the first place.
Brutus began to stalk local women in his early teens. Several women he actually discreetly photographed. Paparazzi over here.
Mm-hmm.
He also stole and kept numerous amounts of lingerie and footwear.
Whoa. So he's got a collection going.
He's like, ooh, I got these ones. I can wear these ones on Sunday night.
Mm-hmm.
However, none of his initial offenses were violent. By his mid-teens, he had begun developing violent fantasies of forcibly possessing a woman. At age 16, he's 16 at this point, he dug an underground area, alcove-like area, around his house, where he tried to symbolically enact his developing fantasies within his mind regarding capturing a woman, and he spent numerous hours within there, like, mentally hoping to actually accomplish this.
So what he built like an underground,
like a little bunker, like, and this is where he's like, this is where I'm going to keep a woman. Brudos did lure a neighborhood girl by taking a pair of her underwear off the laundry line, like without her seeing it, and then he offered to help her find it. Like, oh my god, I don't know where it went. I can help you find it though. Just come over, and we'll go, right? Well, she came over later. When he opened the door, he had a knife in his hand, and he forced her to his bedroom.
And we're in the 50s now.
Yeah. So he has her at knife point, and he's hoping to accomplish his sexual fantasies.
So can I also say is that bomb shelters were like all the rage at this point. Everybody was building that shit in fear of the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be weird to anybody that this guy has built this thing. It's just that he's using it as this, oh man, maybe I can lure a gal, and he finally does.
So once he got her into the bedroom, he exited the bedroom, only to reappear minutes later wearing a mask.
What, a gas mask or what?
I don't know. Just
Gimp mask? Zipper
mask.
mouth?
He forced the girl to strip naked before proceeding to take several photographs of her. Polaroids. Before fleeing minutes later, he like jumped out the window
Of his own house?
Yeah, and then he had his original shirt on, and his hair was in a disarray, and he had a minor scuff mark on his cheek. He appeared back in the room. Like, he jumped out the window, and then he came back around the front of the house, and he goes, oh my god, this guy in a mask locked me in the barn.
No, he didn't.
At knife point.
Oh my gosh. What do they call that? He Houdini'd this woman?
Yeah, he
Dude.
But that's not what happened. There was no other person.
I guess
he
you're
tried
right.
to.
Why do I feel like he had a ghost face mask on?
So this is what happened. Shirtless, just boxers, a knife in the hand. No, but this is what happened. He put her in the room, right? At knife point. He had the knife. Leaves the room, says, I'll be right back. Pretends that he's somebody else with a mask on, and then jumps out a window, and then he comes back in his normal clothes with his hair tousled, with a scuff on his cheek, saying, oh no, that wasn't me. I got stuck. Somebody locked me in the dang barn.
That really happened exactly like that?
Yes.
She didn't fall for it.
I don't know if he necessarily jumped out the window, but that's...
He's like, okay, I'll be back. And then he came back. And then what happened?
So within a year of this first known offense, Brudos started to establish a pattern of abducting girls his own age or younger, typically at knife point.
So he was caught after this first.
And he kept doing it.
Wow, okay.
He would force them into his barn that was on his family farm before ordering them to disrobe, taking pictures of them. He would then lock the girls in a corn crib.
It's a corn crib.
It's where I think corn is kept, like a barrel thing, and it's where corn is kept, where it dries out and stuff like that, like for feed.
Yeah, where it's used to like dry and store corn.
I think that's what it is.
It's a giant, it's like a silo basically.
Yeah, and so he locked him in there, right? And then reappears several minutes later wearing different clothing and his hair combed in a different fashion.
And with like a mustache now.
Hold on. He would then release the girls and said he was Jerry's twin brother.
No, you guys have to pardon my brother. He's not right. He's ill.
And like fake shock. Like, oh my god.
Oh, what? What are you guys doing
at her account?
In here?
Like she would tell him all these details. He goes, "Oh my god, I can't believe he did this to you."
Ah, yeah. And then what happened?
And would ask, "He didn't hurt you, did he?"
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna puke.
Brudos would say that his twin brother was in therapy and that this incident would set him back a bit. Before pleading with the girl not to inform anyone of her ordeal and promising to locate and destroy the camera.
Wow.
And he obviously didn't destroy it. The girls were not subjected to any physical or sexual assault except for fondling, and all apparently agreed as none are known to inform authorities of these experiences. So they believed all this.
They believed
multiple girls. That was my twin brother.
So nobody went to the authorities.
Nope.
Nobody called the cops.
No.
They're just like, oh man, that sucks.
Oh man, I'm sorry for your twin brother. It's
okay.
It
must be really hard for you. Wow.
Brian's like, I'm learning some new tricks.
I'm like, this works? Wow, okay.
So in April 15, wow. In April 1956, Brudos persuaded a 17-year-old girl to get in his car after offering her a ride as she was walking down the side of the road.
Okay.
He's driving down this deserted road, and she
Uh-huh.
goes, "Oh, this is feeling a little weird."
Okay.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And where does this sound familiar from?
From our last case.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. From Pole.
When he turned off and on the side of the road on this deserted area.
Mm-hmm.
She started to panic a little bit. Well, then he proceeded to beat her with a pipe in his fists.
Whoa, jeez.
Papin style.
Richard, this actually happened to this poor woman. You can't say that.
All this stuff has happened to these people that we
know, but it just gets worse and worse every time you do it. Gave it to the back of her head, Papin style. Like, damn, dude.
He then drags her out of the car and demands her to start stripping.
Whoa, okay.
She refuses, and so he punches her square in the face, breaking her nose. The girl starts screaming, and the general altercation attracted the attention of a young couple that just happened to be driving by with their windows down.
Mm-hmm.
The husband and wife immediately get out of the car. The guy sees he's on top of her,
Mm-hmm.
beating her, and he literally runs over and gets him off of her. So it's like, what's going on here?
So when the couple came by, they saw Jerry standing over her. Mm-hmm. And the husband comes over and he's like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah. Oh, you're going to love this. So at first, Brudos just claimed that she had fallen out of the car and was being hysterical.
He's like, you know how these women are.
Yeah.
She's having a bad spell.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, the dude's like, bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. He's like, okay, here's the truth. Some weirdo was attacking her, and I seen it, and I came over and got the dude away. And by the time I got to her, she was just on the ground screaming.
And this chick is
And
like, no, that is not what happened.
Obviously, his story has not believed either of them. He's lying.
Because he's a bad liar. Mm-hmm.
The couple then drove them to their home, and he said, we'll take you home to our house, and we'll get this all sorted out, right?
Mm-hmm.
As soon as they get home, they call an ambulance for the girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the husband immediately calls the police to inform them what's going on.
Good. Smart man.
So at the police station, Brudos admitted to attacking the girl, but claimed that his intention had been to simply intimidate her into removing her clothes in order for him to photograph her.
Okay.
Although he started beating her.
Yeah, and he fucking broke her nose when she didn't.
That's more intimidating than I thought.
So he's giving half-truths.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he denied ever committing any previous acts of this nature.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's never done any of this before.
Mm-hmm.
He's never taken pictures before.
Mm-hmm.
Never forced a woman to strip at knife point.
Mm-hmm.
But he just insisted that his temper had simply got the better of him. So he was arrested upon charges of assault and battery. So they searched his car and his room and found that he had an extensive collection of female clothing plus numerous Polaroid photographs of many girls.
Mm-hmm.
One of whom they were able to identify. So when his mother confronted him,
Mm-hmm.
he claimed another boy had taken those pictures and he just developed them.
Mm-hmm. Because the biggest lies are always filled with the truth. Well, sure, those pictures are there, Mom, but I didn't take them. It was my buddy, and I just developed them. Is what I.
And I was
did.
holding on to
I
them.
wasn't snapping it. I just developed it.
So the girl that was identified in that photo,
Mm-hmm.
right,
Mm-hmm.
was contacted and revealed her ordeal at the hands of Jerry's twin brother.
No! Oh my god.
He doesn't have a twin brother.
Yeah, absolutely. She's going, it was his twin. And they're going, who?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Brudos was remanded in custody to be referred to the Polk County Juvenile Department.
Damn, good.
He entered the facility on April 16th, 1956, where he remained for 9 months. While at the facility, he was subjected to a range of evaluations, but was not grossly mentally ill or suffering from delusions. So doctors diagnosed him with adjustment reaction of adolescence with sexual deviation fetishism.
Mm-hmm. So a big, long term to say this
So
guy's
basically,
a fucking perv. Not the fun
his
kind.
mind adjusted to the reaction of developing through puberty. Something happened in his mind that made him thinking this was okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is
what's normal and what I want.
This is what happens.
Uh-huh.
This is what happens with sex,
Mm-hmm.
and this is how I feel, and
Yeah.
that makes me feel good.
Because no love, no guidance.
His sexual fantasies revolved around the hatred that he harbored towards his mother and women in general.
Yeah, it makes sense. He's like fantasizing about like capturing one and hurting them and raping them, and
because
he fucking hates women.
Yeah, because his mom was so cruel to him, and he was insecure and not confident. He would be uncomfortable discussing anything about sex with anybody, but he would tell the doctors that he suffered from nocturnal emissions about every 2 months.
Nocturnal emissions, is that
Wet
a wet
dreams.
dream? Oh, is that what nocturnal emission means?
Yeah, it's a scientific term.
I just didn't. How have I never understood that? Emission. Yeah, duh. I've never put 2 and 2 together on that one.
Oh my God, Brian.
I've put 5 and 1 together many, many, many nights.
He would try to live a clean life, not smoking or drinking, though. He was actually allowed to leave to attend high school during the day. So while he's going through psychiatric evaluations at a mental hospital, it's like, yeah, go back to school for the day. And then come back to the mental hospital at night.
That's what he would do?
Yep.
That's what they allowed him to do?
Yes.
Okay. To get an education.
Yeah. At school, nobody knew of his treatment or that he was at a mental hospital, so he didn't receive any attention from that. After his 9-month stay, he was released to his parents. A year later, Jerry graduated from high school and attended Oregon State University. Go Beavers.
Go Beavers.
For a few semesters.
Go Ducks, too. I don't give a fuck.
Go Ducks, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, for real. Either one of you.
All right. For a few semesters, he attended OSU before dropping out in March of 1959. That's when he joined the U.S. Army. Yikes. When he joined the U.S. Army, he was sent to Fort Gordon, Georgia, for basic training. For Jerry, this is the first time he'd been able to be away from his parents. He wanted to start his own life and get away from his past endeavors. Like, all that stuff I did with the underwear and shoes, clean slate.
I'm a new man.
I'm a new man. I'm away from my parents, but to be my own man.
Clearly, it was a success story.
And that was a Shoe Fetish Slayer.
Yeah.
Anyway.
How sad, though, because it could have been.
His old habits, however, began to plague him. During the day, he trained in the Signal Corps, giving him the opportunity to pursue his interest in electronics and communications.
Okay.
At night, however, his fantasies would take over. Shortly after moving to Georgia, he became convinced that in the middle of the night, a Korean woman was sneaking into his bed to seduce him.
He would say what? In his
He's like, in the middle of the night, a Korean woman would sneak into the barracks, into his room, and into bed with him to seduce him.
And why is he saying this? He's trying to lay the groundwork.
This is what he's seeing. Like, his fantasies and stuff like that are coming back to plague him.
Oh.
So he's like, I'm going to be a new man, but yeah, this Korean woman won't leave me the fuck alone.
Oh, that's scary. Like, at night, he's having, like, these, like,
fantasies
or
delusions.
Hallucinations, bro.
To him, it was real.
I bet she looked like that little bitch from The Ring and shit. I bet this some demon ass.
No, she was an attractive Korean woman because she was trying to seduce him.
He would have dreams of a woman coming to his room at night.
Many nights. Many nights. Like, every night.
This isn't a fantasy. This is something playing out in his
like,
apparent mind.
No, like, it's like, imagine if you were laying in bed and you and a sexy Korean woman walks into your room and gets in bed with you.
All right.
Yeah, see? Like, he's seeing all this. Nobody else is seeing this, though. But he's like,
no.
And this would happen every night, Brian. He would soon realize that it was a dream and or an hallucination. There it is. That's it.
Hallucination.
Good
job.
But would be also disturbed that the thought of the woman, like, just thinking about that woman would, like, make him pissed. Like, she won't leave me alone. I'm just trying to. This Korean woman keeps trying to seduce me.
Yeah, she keeps coming in here trying to get this D. So annoying.
Mrs. Whatever, you trying to seduce me?
Mrs. Robinson. That's classic. You should watch The Graduate. It's good.
He said he did not only want to, like, beat her off. That sounds.
She was trying to beat him off, and that's what he was getting upset about. Stupid.
Well, he said he didn't physically just want to, like, fight her off. He wanted to kill her.
Of course, yeah.
So eventually Jerry went to talk to the Army chaplain, and he explained all these dreams and hallucinations. The chaplain referred him to the Army psychiatrist, in which the psychiatrist deemed him unfit for duty.
Wow.
On October 15th, 1959, Jerry was discharged under AR 635-208.
Wow. Like, you're nuts. You
individual is deemed unfit for service despite reasonable attempts to correct the problem.
Which is a bummer because he was really doing this thing, trying to be like, okay,
it.
I'm gonna
and
change.
He literally went to get help, and they're just like, bye.
You got to get the fuck out of here. You're a lost cause. And then it probably goes back to that whole not being enough. Thing and not being guided and not being, man, this is fun. Okay,
At this point, he's 20 years old and has no choice but to move back in with his parents.
His mom.
Go. So he moved into the spare bedroom. So when they were younger, the boys shared a room. So now it's a spare bedroom because both the kids were out of the house. So he moved into the spare bedroom back on the farm in Oregon. But that was short-lived because his brother Larry returned home from college, and his mother said that Larry deserved the spare bedroom, and that made Jerry go stay out in the old shed.
I'm just barely catching this. Their names are Larry and Jerry.
And Henry and Marie.
Okay, but Larry and Jerry.
Larry's meaner than Gary, or something like that.
Yeah, then Jerry! Oh, Gary, why'd you have to go? Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, sorry. Larry and
welcome
Jerry.
to the Bone Barrel Podcast, where we're going to make a lot of SpongeBob references. But yeah, she made him go stay in the old shed.
Because your brother's coming home, and he needs it.
Imagine staying with your mom, and you're like, well, your sister's coming to stay with us. You need to go stay out in the barn.
Like, he's coming home, he needs to, like, regroup himself and like heal and shit, and she's like, by the way, your brother's coming, get the fuck out of here.
You're out in the tent in the backyard now.
He was
Brian.
already kicked out of the army. Yeah. Like, nobody wants this guy.
Your mother did that to you.
And then of course he feels like he has to like force himself on women. Like, he has no confidence in himself, nobody wants him. That's horrible.
So being frustrated and isolated now, he started to go back to his old habits. First, starting with stealing and hiding women's underwear. However, it quickly escalated. One evening, while Jerry was running errands by Salem, he spotted a woman in a red dress. Classic. Pretty woman. It was Julia Roberts.
Like Cameron Diaz in The Mask.
He began to follow her. When she reached her apartment doorway, he followed her into the dimly lit vestibule. And, Brian, I know you've been here before.
Okay, let's hear it.
So it was then that she realized that someone was following her. And this is where I know you've been here before, Brian.
Okay.
Before she could say anything, he wrapped his hand around her neck and choked her until she was unconscious. But then he didn't know what to do, and he kind of panicked, so he took her shoes and then ran away.
I'm a gentleman, and I never choke unless a lady asks to be choked, number one. Number two, I've never stolen a pair of shoes in my life. I may have caught a quick,
Ew!
You're making it sound like I'm some kind of skis. I guess I'm not helping, but anyway, go ahead.
In the weeks that followed, he began to develop a pattern where he would get stressed out, then find a woman, follow her, attack her by choking her until they're unconscious, take their shoes and maybe another piece of clothing, and then would leave.
Oh my god! So he just continues this thing on.
He just chokes women out, takes her shoes. The woman wakes up. What the fuck?
She's like, oh fuck, yeah, dude choked me.
Where are my shoes?
Where the fuck are my shoes?
Where's my underwear?
Right. But, dude, horrible. Okay.
He would just leave.
What the heck? Because I wonder why. Because he can't bring himself to get to the main event anymore.
Yeah. No, he doesn't. He's never done anything. He doesn't know sex. He panics.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know what to do now.
And he's never raped anybody.
He's like, ooh, I feel better, choked her out. But what do I do now? Ooh, shoes.
You can go to a department store and buy shoes. I gotta fucking.
No, but he would bring his trophies back to the shed that he was staying in on his family's property.
Whoa, dude.
And he would sleep with and fantasize with them.
What the heck?
Could you imagine? Hey, Jerry, what's up? He's just in a pile of shoes.
Yeah, you're like, hey, man, you up yet? And you open the door. He's just fucking, yeah.
The shoes just explode out like a cartoon.
Oh, just a minute. Oh. So trying to put
shoes clattering on the ground.
Yeah, fucking high heel in his teeth. And
apparently, though, Jerry's professional life was one of the bright spots in his life after being in the army.
The way he did well for himself, or what?
With the training he got in the Signal Corps, he was able to get a job as an engineer at a small radio station in Corvallis.
Okay, that's cool.
It was there he met Ralphine Schwindler, who was 17 years old. And like Jerry, she was... Don't worry, it's not... This isn't a victim.
Gosh, I'm going, fucking A, this over and over.
Okay, maybe it is a victim in another sense, but she's not a victim. She was friends with another boy who hung around the radio station. That's how they met.
Okay.
She didn't necessarily work there. When she first met Jerry, she was not interested in him at all. Even though he was intimidated by and despised women, Jerry did not feel that way about Ralphine. She's different.
I like this one.
He noticed that she was nice to him and would laugh at his jokes and was genuinely interested in his knowledge of his line of work. For the first time since the neighborhood lady when he was younger, about 5.
He's actually connecting with somebody.
He's felt actually good about himself.
Oh my gosh.
For the first time. However, her parents were not impressed. For one reason, he was a 24-year-old at the time.
Yeah, for
seeing
sure.
a 17-year-old. I mean, that's almost 18. But still, it's like...
Yeah, it's right there. And even nowadays, it's certainly not unheard of. Like, there are some families that are cool with that kind of thing. But, I mean, is it a little weird? Yeah. It's a little weird.
But it's funny because back in the old days...
Oh, shit. If you weren't having babies by 14, 15, they're going, you're going to get old and your womb's going to dry up. You better, we better get you wed. Trade you for some cattle and shit.
Jesus. Jerry would describe Ralphine's mother as stubborn and independent.
He didn't like her mom.
Yeah, for that reason.
That's how you know it's true love.
With the father, Jerry would say that he felt like he could do anything, make us decide where he could go or whatever.
So he doesn't like her parents.
Just because he was older than me. I'm like, no, it's because he's her father.
Yeah, and she's still a minor.
Yeah. Because Jerry was older, that's what made Ralphine attract to him. She was like, ooh, older man.
Of course.
You know, all women are like...
Yeah, time and time again.
Because he's older, he seemed... more sophisticated than the boys at her age. And the fact that her parents hated him made him even more attractive to her.
Oh, gosh, here we go. How did I not see this coming? Of course it did. Okay,
My mommy and daddy don't like you. Oh, yeah.
So you're kind of a bad boy. Yeah. And you're older and you know stuff about radios and stuff.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Now, with Ralphine only being 17... she didn't notice any red flags from Jerry. Because it's a 17-year-old.
Because she hasn't seen the shack yet.
When she became pregnant and Jerry suggested that they should get married, she happily agreed.
Okay.
Jerry later stated about the marriage is that, well, he wanted someone to sleep with and she wanted out of her house.
And so that was about the
that's
depth
love.
of it. Yeah, dang.
Which Ralphine would actually agree it's an even playing field because even though her home life wasn't bad, she'd rather marry Jerry than listen to her parents.
Snotty little.
They married in 1962. And a few months later, Ralphine gave birth to their daughter, Megan. At first, the marriage seemed to be going great. Financially, they were fine. Jerry would shower Ralphine and Megan with small gifts and attention. Like, it was going really good, actually. Things began to change, though. Some things that made Ralphine uncomfortable. Like, Jerry insisted that whenever they were home, that they would have to be nude.
Oh, what? Okay. That's kind of weird.
Like, as soon as we walk through the door, take the clothes off. We're nude. We're nudists.
Both of us.
But there's a child there, now.
Yeah.
Well, Ralphine agreed to it for a while until... Megan became like the toddler kind of stage, and she's like, this is not okay. Cause
your dick is out.
He also had the urge to take photos of his wife nude or while they were having sex, which that's normal. I mean,
not necessarily inordinate, but if she's not about it,
which she was kind of uncomfortable with it.
Yeah, then it's a no-go.
Not okay. Always ask your partner.
Yeah, sure.
Before you start doing it.
Sure, and communicate about these things too, because you also never know.
Yeah.
They might be like, I've freaking been waiting for you to ask.
Well, he would do the in black and white and Polaroid, which he was able to develop at home, which she was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I guess I'm okay with it for now because you're doing it all at home. But eventually he wanted to do color photos, which he would have to take and be developed at a lab. Other people would see these photos, which she was not okay with. And she goes, okay, that I'm not okay
That
with.
I can't do that.
Yeah, no, don't do that. Another thing she was uncomfortable with is at times, Jerry would ask her to put a nylon stocking over her face or wear spiked high heels.
Okay. I'm trying to understand. So, like, spiked high heels, what, just because you like the shoes?
Like, freaking just boom, like hot, like spikes.
Because I immediately think like, oh yeah, wear spiked high heels. I think of like S&M.
Yep.
Like she's like grinding it into his
But
balls.
his thing is, he doesn't do that. He's just like, I want you to wear these.
He's just
and
into
I'm
the
gonna take
shoes.
pictures.
I mean, okay, that's
But
not
remember his obsession with the high heels and stuff like that.
and it's definitely connected to all the other bullshit, the rapes and So this is not a healthy road that he's heading down with his wife.
Nope. After a couple years, their marriage began to become both strained and strange.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever Ralphine would be giving attention and doting on their daughter, Jerry would become depressed because he's not getting attention.
Fucking baby. It just grosses me out. Go ahead. Sorry.
It would cause him to leave the house.
I've known parents like that.
And he would go back to his old habits. Whenever he was home, he would push the family away. Like his little daughter coming up to him and he goes, no. Yeah, no. Like, go away.
Jeez.
I want nothing to do with you. Sound like his mother a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he doesn't have the tools to love somebody properly.
So the event that pushed his dark habits over the edge was in 1967, when his second child was born. He believed that if he witnessed the birth of his child, he would be absolved of all the bad things he had done and set him on a better path.
Like if I watch the birth of my kid, maybe it'll change something in my
like it's a
heart
miracle,
and mind.
it's a miracle
kind of
birth, you know. So it's like, who knows? Might have done something. I don't know. Or he just would have been scared. He made Ralphie promise him that when the time came, she would have one of the nurses come out and get him and bring him into the delivery room so he could witness the birth. However, when that time came, no one came to get him. He actually tried to force his way into the room, but the hospital staff blocked him and told him they were given explicit orders from the doctor to keep him out. Ralphine, however, was the one that told the doctor to let them in the room. She expressed that Jerry had always been possessive and jealous of her, and that he should not witness what happens during the delivery of a child. She said that she did not want him to see another man playing with her.
Because it would like set him off or what?
Well, first of all, Brian, it's the birth of a child. The doctor isn't playing with her.
Yeah, he's not playing with her. Why is she saying it like that?
Well, it could be that Jerry had conditioned her to believing a lot of sexualized things in her life. Things are sexualized. Or like making things sexualized.
Including the birth of
a child.
Her. Wow.
Or something like that. And so in her mind, she's twisted it in her mind.
Oh my
gosh. Remember, she's only like 19 probably at this point.
And so she's still like a baby about these things. And she's going, well, the doctor's going to be doing that kind of thing because that's what this is when you have a kid. Whoa.
That night, he snuck out of the hospital while Ralphine was sleeping and the baby, still in the hospital. He snuck out of the hospital and drove into Portland until he found a woman on the streets.
Jeez.
He watched her and followed her for hours. He followed her home and watched her through her window.
Newborn baby in the hospital.
Yep.
Wife in the hospital.
Yep. Followed this woman home. Watched her for hours through her window. Kept watching her until the lights turned out. He broke into the house. Or not the house, the apartment. Crept into her room and started rummaging through her closet while she slept, looking for her shoes. However, he wasn't being subtle, and she woke up to find this strange man in her room. Before she could even scream, Jerry was on top of her with his hands around her neck. He claimed he only meant to do as usual, but once she was unconscious, he couldn't help himself and sexually assaulted her.
Oh, jeez.
Then stole her shoes and fled the apartment.
Didn't kill her.
Just sexually assaulted her and stole her shoes. After a few months following their son Jason's birth, Ralphine said it was strange, but Jerry began to become pretty normal. Unlike his relationship with Megan, where he was distant and cold, Jerry was attentive and engaged with his son. When he went on errands, he would insist on taking Jason with him. He even took up some of the responsibilities around the house, doing the dishes, vacuuming, laundry. However, at night, he would continue his habits, breaking into women's rooms, choking them unconscious, and stealing their shoes. He stated that doing this every night is what kept him from exploding at home.
What do they call that when you come up behind somebody and you do this? Like, is he
Chokehold?
Yeah, is he like giving them the arm bar? Or like, what that's what I picture, is him just like,
no, he's full on him.
Have you seen the meme of the Batman kid that comes up behind his mom? She's like, do you want something for dinner? And he chokes her out. Right? Okay, I keep picturing that. I keep picturing him coming up, fucking choking him out. And then, all right.
By January 26th, 1968, he finally lost all control of himself. He was out working in the yard when he spotted a young woman coming down the sidewalk, 19-year-old Linda Slauson, a door-to-door encyclopedia saleswoman from Aloha, Oregon.
Okay.
She had stopped in front of the Brudos household in her high heels
Yep.
and was wondering which way to go when it started to rain. She ran up to Jerry and wondered if his house was the house she had an appointment with. He looked her up and down, lingering for a few seconds at her high heels.
Of course.
He had looked back at her and said, well, yes, this is the house you're looking for. When they got inside, Jerry stated that his wife was having company upstairs and stated that they should go downstairs to his workshop. She began laying... So they go down to the workshop, right? In the basement. She began laying out all of her brochures and encyclopedias, giving her spiel about the job. But it was dark in the room and she was having a hard time finding all the information in the right order.
Yeah.
And so Jerry was like, okay, let me turn on the lights, right? Well, instead of turning on the lights, he gets behind her with a length of 2x4 and smacks her in the back of the head, Pappin style.
Richard.
That's the last Pappin style joke I'm gonna make because it gets pretty bad from here on.
Okay.
Okay.
How big of you?
She was knocked onto the floor and unconscious. And ever since Jerry was young, remember this, he fantasized about capturing a woman and keeping her. Remember this. Doing whatever he wanted and pleased. He knelt down beside her, noticed that she was moving because she was still breathing. He then put his hands around her throat and choked the life out of her.
Whoa.
In the days that followed, he proceeded to dress and undress Linda's body and the clothing that he stole from around the neighborhood.
Oh my gosh.
Different underwears, different high heels.
Like a mannequin. Oh my gosh.
Putting her in different underwear and lingerie and other various women's clothing.
All the shit that he's stolen.
Yep. Throughout the previous months.
And twisted.
When his wife and children were asleep, which, by the way, they were in the house during all this.
Oh, I didn't even think about the family. They're like right upstairs. And he's like, yeah, don't come down to my shop. I got some stuff. Don't interrupt me.
Yep. When his wife and children were asleep, he would sneak down into the basement and sexually assault Linda's dead body. Necrophilia. And photograph her body in different poses and in different forms of undress. After a few days, her body began to decompose, and so he chopped off her left foot, which he kept in the back of the freezer in the basement.
Like as a trophy.
Yep. The rest of the body he mixed up with some old car parts, and he threw over a rail somewhere into the Willamette River. Willamette.
Yeah.
I think I would know that by now.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, it's the Willamette.
Oh, it's because when I was hearing somebody say it, they said Willamette, and but they
must not be from here.
They're not from here.
Absolutely.
So when Linda didn't return, her mother reported her missing immediately. However, at the time, there was another case going on where another girl was reported missing, a 14-year-old. But was assumed that she went to join a hippie group in Washington.
Whoa.
Or was just a runaway.
Like a commune?
Yep.
That's crazy.
Or a runaway.
The 60s now.
And although Linda's mother stated that she would not run away and join a hippie group, the cases became intertwined with each other. And so they assumed she ran away and joined this hippie group.
Yeah, so she's not missing. She ducked out.
But why would she run away at 19-year-old doing a nice job that she loved?
Yeah, and what inclination...
Yep.
What idea did they have? Like, what did she do? How did she live her life that made them go, oh, that's something she would do?
Nothing. She was a normal, she was a perfect student. She was everything.
See, and she's out selling encyclopedias door to door. She's clearly a go-getter.
She was on a job that day. She wouldn't just run away.
No. What the heck? Okay. So now we're assuming, yeah, she took off with some... She took off and joined some following somewhere. Okay.
Yep, that's what they're saying. But
okay.
Realistically, she's now at the bottom of the river.
Jeez.
Except for her foot. She got one foot in the freezer. Anyway. The photos and the foot that Jerry had kept from Linda was enough to keep his urges at bay for a while. By November, it was the holiday season, and the Brudos household was filled with families. Jerry and Ralphine's families. Jerry's mother.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and you know dang well that Jerry's mother was talking mad shit with Ralphine's parents.
For sure. Yeah, he does suck. Your daughter is too good for him.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit. I didn't even want him. And Jerry became very stressed. And when Jerry became stressed, he would look at the photos that he had or the trophy that he had from Linda. Or he would go around the neighborhood and steal women's clothing from clothing lines. But, however, with the time of year it was, the cold weather. It's November in Washington, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
cold.
We know.
It's raining.
Nobody was hanging clothes outside on clotheslines. So for him to find a new object for his fixation, he would have to go into somebody's home. On the evening of November 26, 1968, Jan Whitney was on her way to visit her parents in McMinnville until her car broke down on the I-5 between Salem and Albany.
Wow.
Yeah, we know all these places.
Yeah,
man.
for sure.
We can see it
now.
now.
I can picture it.
A few miles before, Jan had picked up 2 male hitchhikers, giving them a ride. They all had gone out of the car to look under the hood, you know, to see if they could figure out what's wrong. None of them could figure out what's wrong. And this was when Jerry was on his way home when he spotted them on the side of the road. He pulled over and got out to find out what the trouble they were having. When he found out it had been broken down, he offered to fix it for them free of charge, like no problem. Since he knew a lot about cars, he stated, but he didn't have the tools on him. Now, this is pretty bold, don't you think, Brian? This
Rolling
is
up on a group of people.
with 2 men and a woman, right?
Yeah.
He offered all 3 of them a ride and let the 2 men off at the nearest off-ramp. But you'd think the men would want to be like...
Yeah, why didn't they stick around?
At this time, this wasn't like a thing, you know? Remember?
It always has been.
I know, but it's like, he seemed normal. He offered to fix their car for her. He and Jan then drove on to his house, where he said that he would get his tools and then drive back to her car and fix it up for her.
They're down in my basement, next to my foot.
Brian, get the foot out of your mouth. I don't know. When they got... When they got to Jerry's home, he went to the front door. Then Jan noticed he was coming back. He said that the door was locked and he didn't have his key. He said they would have to wait until his wife got home for them to get his tools. He said it would only be a few minutes, but in fact, it would be hours until his wife got home because she was at a friend's house with the kids.
So what now? Why not? Okay.
So Jan proceeded to get back into the back seat and began to have small talk with Jerry. They're just talking about stuff, right? Jerry made the comment, he's like, oh, you know what's funny? Have you ever tried, like, closing your eyes and tying your shoes? Like, apparently it's really difficult. And she goes, no, I've never thought of that. And she goes,
no, man, I haven't.
So she did. She closed her eyes and he reached out and grabbed the belt that was in the back seat.
Oh, my gosh.
And before she knew what he was doing, he had looped it around her throat, pulled it tight, and when he had it securely tight, he then got out of the car and shut it in the door and pulled it tighter.
So that's...
He then went
in, locked the door over the belt,
and then
kept fucking pulling her against the inside of the car door. That is savage.
He then went inside his house, which was unlocked, leaving her there, right? Struggling. He went inside the house to make sure his wife was really gone. He wasn't even sure if his wife was home or not.
He did this right outside
right
his
outside
home.
the front door.
Broad daylight.
Well, I don't know if it's broad daylight, but it's like evening.
Heading towards the evening. Okay.
But still, his wife could have been home. He didn't even know. He just did it. But she wasn't home. He comes back and she's dead. Once he confirmed that she was dead, he sexually assaulted her body in the back seat and then took her down into the basement. He began to take pictures of her body in various lingerie, underwear, and shoes that he stole from around the neighborhood once again. So he continued this for the next few days and then soon realized he'd have to get rid of the body, just like he did with Linda. But this time he wanted to keep a better souvenir than he did with Linda's foot. So he decided that he wanted to make paperweights out of her breasts.
What? He, cut them off and, what did he...
No.
Dipped them in,
For paperweights around the house, for one. He cut her right breast off to make a mold so that he could make a lead paperweight.
Out of, her...
Out of the mold.
Shaped like a tit? That is...
But he added too much of the hardening agent, and it ruined it, so it didn't come out right. So to ensure that nobody went into the basement, he took his family on a trip to Portland for a few days.
Whoa.
Leaving Jan's body to decompose in the basement.
Well, how the hell... Aren't they going to smell it when they come back?
Funny you say that. It's funny you would say that, right?
How the fuck did he... Oh my gosh, this guy
So when they
so
returned
stupid.
home, before they could, perhaps smell this decomposing smell throughout the house, they'd realized that somebody had driven a car through their front... through their garage while they were gone.
Totally unrelated on accident.
And left the car and just left, right?
Whoa,
Well, the cops showed up.
Okay,
hold on. Cops showed up and wanted to look in the garage, but it was locked.
That is some cosmic orchestrated... That's crazy, dude.
However, it was locked, so they kind of like were like, okay, we're gonna look around somewhere else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so while they were looking around, Jerry was able to wrap Jan's body up in a sheet and then hide it in the pump house out back.
While the police are there.
Yep. After the police left, he then took her body to the Willamette River, weighed it down with some car parts, and threw it in. When Jan didn't show up to her parents immediately reported her missing. The cops found her car that was locked on the side of the freeway with nothing to show why she vanished, and there was no evidence for police to start looking anywhere. And that's where we're ending part 1, Brian.
Oh, I can't believe this man. Like, of all things, I'm going to make paperweights out of her titties. That is so random, and what would you even do with that? And wouldn't that just be something else that you had to hide? And somebody finds your titty paperweight?
Apparently he didn't believe so. He was going to use it around his house with his family at home. Brian, I'm just going to tell you now, it gets worse.
That was fascinating.
He makes nunchucks out of the next set of titties.
No, he doesn't. Shut up. Okay, I was going to say. That is fucking funny. Shut up.
Titty chucks. You believed it for a second there.
Yeah, I thought you were serious. I was like, you ruined it. You spoiled it.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but I know. And anyway, that was Real Horrors. Take it away, Brian.
Thank you, sir. Welcome to Horror Reels, where we conduct deep dive reviews of horror films and TV shows. So, Richard, I'm going to ask you, do you know anything about this movie?
Nope.
At all. Okay. That's perfect. The absolute best way to go into this movie is completely blind. Today we are covering Barbarian from 2022, written and directed by Zach Greger. So Zach Greger is originally a comedian. He was in this comedy troupe called The Whitest Kids You Know. I don't know. If that sounds familiar.
Yep.
Do you know The Whitest Kids You Know? Okay. So Zach Greger
that was funny.
Is one of the founding members. He co-directed and co-wrote a couple of like indie comedy films, but Barbarian is the first movie that he's written and directed solo by himself, and it's a horror film. Without going too much further, let's just dive right in and start. And as always, this is the Bone Barrel Podcast, and these cuts are heavily spoiled. We open on a black screen, and it's accompanied by the quiet and growing sound of rain and thunder, and we slowly pan up as if from underground, revealing this cute and small little house on a suburban street, and it's night, and it's pouring. It's just raining cats and dogs. There's a single porch light on above the front door, and we stay focused on the front of the house as the rain continues to pour and thunder rumbles, and the music is slowly building to this crescendo, and it sounds like tortured and tormented voices, like wailing and whining and shrieking, this music rising, and a car pulls up in front of the camera, and it parks in front of the house. It's a Jeep Cherokee.
Oh, God.
I was super bummed out to find out that it wasn't a Jeep Grand Cherokee, so I could make a Minecraft joke.
God damn.
I know, missed opportunity.
Oh, no, I hit somebody with my Jeep Grand Cherokee.
And then later when he's like, my love, ever since that day when you hit me with your Jeep Grand Cherokee. Yeah. It's a Jeep Cherokee, and it's the same shot.
Cherokee.
You sound like her. So this car pulls up and it parks in front of the house. It's a Jeep Cherokee, and it's the same shot in front of the house, except now a car has pulled in front of us. The music continues escalating louder and louder as the camera picks up and approaches the passenger window of this Jeep. And the wailing and the screaming are at an all-time shrieking high as we suddenly enter through the closed passenger window and into Tess's car, where it is suddenly silent, save for the sounds of rain pattering the vehicle. So it's almost like all of these voices, the shrieking and wailing on the soundtrack is outside, almost serving as like a warning to this girl as she's pulling up, but she's not hearing it. She's safe and warm in her car on her phone. Tess, our main character in the driver's seat, is played by Georgina Campbell. She's been in a number of films.
That name sounds familiar.
I know that she was in Ashana Night Shyamalan's The Watchers from last year. M. Night Shyamalan's kid.
That's not where I know her from. I know her.
Bird Box Barcelona.
Bird Box Barcelona.
Yeah, it's the sequel to Bird Box. She's been in a number of movies. I'm ashamed to say this is the only movie I've ever seen her in. So Tess is sitting in the driver's seat and she's concentrating on her phone, and we cut to a close-up of her phone screen, and Tess is reading an email with instructions on how to enter the Airbnb that she just pulled up to. So this little house is an Airbnb. And we see at the top of the screen that Tess is suddenly receiving a call from a Marcus, and she swipes the call away and she sighs to herself before putting her phone away and exiting the vehicle. Outside, it's the Great Flood, like Noah's Ark level. It's a lot. And we see what looks like a small suburban street behind Tess. Again, it's night as she's exiting the vehicle and she fishes out her suitcase from the back seat. It's dark. It's dimly lit. with an eerie orange glow from sporadic street lamps running down the street, and Tess is toting numerous bags to the front porch of the small house as she's reciting the lock key code to herself. So she gets to the porch, and she finds the lockbox, and she's trying to enter the code with her. She's trying to press the code in. It doesn't work. She enters the number again, and it still doesn't work. And so she curses to herself and pulls her phone out once more, and she's looking over the emailed instructions for the Airbnb again. We see on the phone that Marcus is calling again, and Tess frustratedly tells him to leave her alone as she swipes his call away once more. She finds the correct code on her phone, and she tries the lockbox again, this time opening it. However, there's no key inside, and Tess is telling herself, you've got to be kidding me. She tries the front door. It does not open. It's locked. And so we cut to Tess now standing and shivering on the front porch, and she's kind of pouting to herself as she's making a phone call. And she's greeted with the voicemail for a property management service, which prompts her to leave a message. She politely enough leaves a voicemail explaining that she arrived at the Airbnb on Barbarian, and there's no key in the lockbox, and that she's stuck outside in the rain, and to please call her back. She hangs up, cursing to herself once more. She begins turning her attention to the other houses across the street, and the camera pans following her gaze as we notice that none of the other houses have lights on, either on the porch or inside. The street is pretty much pitch black except for the few glowing street lamps, and so you can barely even see these houses in the dark. And we cut to Tess getting in her car and slamming the door shut and groaning to herself, ugh. And she looks out the driver window, and she realizes that there's now a light on in the living room of the Airbnb. The Airbnb, the address is 476 Barbary, so that's how we'll address it. And we cut to Tess impatiently ringing the doorbell over and over and over again before giving it one final long buzz. And she looks in through the living room window, and she peers through the sheer curtains, and she can see a man who turns on another lamp inside, and he's kind of peering at her questioningly, like, what the fuck? The man comes to the front door, slowly and cautiously opening it, and he's peering around left to right before asking Tess, yeah? This is Keith, played by Bill Skarsgård. Most
oh my
people...
God.
Go ahead.
It.
Yes.
Pennywise.
Most people would probably know Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise the Clown from It Chapter 1 and 2. Well done. He also played the titular character in Nosferatu. He was in Boy Kills World, which was amazing.
Still haven't seen Nosferatu.
Oh,
I've heard it's good.
I mean, people liked it. People liked it. There was a lot that I appreciated about it, the cinematography and the music, and there was so much to appreciate, but at the end of the day, I shouldn't be checking my watch, man. Very well made, it just wasn't entertaining to me. Skarsgård, however, he's awesome. He's awesome in everything he does. He plays it pretty dreamy in this one too. He's kind of awkward, but he's got the hair and the whole sleepy puppy dog who me kind of Gosling vibe. Tess seems to notice because she takes a second before hesitantly asking him. She goes, I'm sorry, who are you? And he's like, who are you? And Tess is like, this is 476 Barbary, right? And he says, yeah, I think so. And she goes, you don't know? And she's like all suspicious. And Keith is like kind of defensive, and he's going, yeah, it's the middle of the night. I'm renting this place. I don't remember offhand. Tess tells him no, that she's renting this place tonight. And there's a thunderclap as it continues pouring buckets outside. And Tess tells Keith that she booked this house on Airbnb a month ago. And Keith tells her that he booked on HomeAway. Keith asks if she's sure she has the right day and if she called anybody yet. Tess says she did and no one answered. Tess fishes out her phone and pulls up the email, and she shows it to Keith. Keith looks over the email and he confirms. He's all like, fuck, this is unbelievable. And Tess asks, what is she supposed to do? And Keith is like, I don't know. Why don't you come inside and we'll call these guys and try to figure it out. So he opens the door further and he steps back, and Tess hesitates before we cut to a side shot of her entering the house as we pan along the side of the house, cutting to a black screen. So she's entering into the dark is what we're seeing, right? Now we're on a black screen and we get our title card, Barbarian, and it's accompanied by that creeping and dreadful music. The tormented voices yelling and rising. It's awesome and scary. So we cut to the interior of 476 Barbary. It's a cute and small house. It's well decorated with wood floors. There's a living area and a kitchen and a small dining area, all open to one another. Tess tells Keith that she needs to use the bathroom, and he shows her where it is down the hall and into the left, Tess hesitantly begins to head down the hall before suddenly turning, facing Keith, and she asks if he would mind pulling up his reservation confirmation. And Keith asks what, in case I'm some kind of weirdo who's broken in here to sleep, and Tess doesn't say anything. Keith tells her it's fine, and he says that he'll find his phone. Tess heads to the bathroom, and she locks and shuts the door behind her. And she's standing at the sink, looking in the mirror and sighing to herself. We cut to Tess sitting on the toilet to take a piss. She sees a bag of Keith's.
And she just
Yeah. Yeah, she didn't need to get in because she was cold and shivering. She needed to take a shit.
She's like a chihuahua.
Yeah, she's like, oh God, I'm locked out, please. We cut to Tess sitting on the toilet to take a piss.
She's not a girl who poops. She's a bitch who shits.
Ew. Oh, that's awful. Where did you hear that?
That was a quote I seen on Facebook.
I don't want a bitch who shits. I want a girl who poops. A bitch who shit sounds awful. She's like, sorry, honey, you'd better get out of here. I'm going to be a while.
I got to take a shit.
Mm-hmm. Stupid. So she's trying to take a piss, and she sees a bag of Keith's toiletries on the bathroom sink. She reaches over and she briefly snoops through the bag before gazing around the rest of the bathroom, and she makes note of an electrical toothbrush plugged in on the floor. It's got a short cord, that's why it's plugged in on the floor. And so Tess comes back down the hall, and she's passing the kitchen and entering into the living area, and Keith is nowhere to be found. And she looks around kind of uncomfortable momentarily before he suddenly pops up behind her, and it gives her a little scare on accident. Keith hands her his phone. Tess looks over his reservation confirmation on his phone, and to her disappointment sees that he's telling the truth. They've been double booked for the night. So Keith awkwardly tells her that he doesn't know what the protocol is for this kind of thing, and Tess doesn't either, and they stand in brief awkward silence before Tess says that she's just going to go find somewhere else to stay for the night. And Keith clearly feels bad, and Tess tells him it's not his fault. And he asks what's she gonna do, drive around until she finds a hotel? And Tess says that she'll make some calls and figure it out. And Keith asks, what, in your car? And he tells her that's not a good idea. And he explains that the look of the neighborhood is not awesome and that she shouldn't be sitting out there by herself at this time of night, that he himself wouldn't do that. Keith tells her that she's more than welcome to hang out inside where it's dry and safe while she looks for a hotel. Tess hesitantly looks around before we cut to her sitting on the couch, looking over hotels in Detroit on her phone. So we're in Detroit.
Oh, no.
Right.
Oh, you aren't in a good neighborhood.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So he's telling her, it's bad out there. You shouldn't be hanging out. Like, we're in Detroit. Yeah, you can't be sitting out in your car middle of the night, you know. So now she's looking up hotels.
No offense to people in Detroit.
They know what it is. It is what it is. The town is, I mean...
If you're offended, we're sorry.
Oh, but man, Detroit is a central and important piece of American history.
Oh, yeah.
The vehicles alone, man. I mean, hats off to Detroit. And then all the musicians that have come from there. The White Stripes, Danny Brown, Eminem, fucking Madonna. Detroit's the shit.
I wonder what part of Detroit they're in. That'll tell you how dangerous it is.
We'll find out. Hats off to Detroit. So she's on the phone, and she's looking for hotels in Detroit. And Keith comes from down the hall, and he enters the living area, and he gives her the Wi-Fi info for the house. And he officially introduces himself and tells her his name is Keith. And he's a little bit awkward about it. She tells him her name is Tess, and he tells her that's a pretty name. Again, kind of awkward. She glances at him briefly before telling him thanks. She's not biting. Keith is trying to be a good host, and he bumbles around the kitchen, offering to make Tess some tea. And she tells him that she's good. And he also fishes out a bottle of wine with a ribbon taped around it, and he says that someone left it here and that there's some nuts as well if she wants some. And she tells him, no, she's cool, but thank you. And Keith is like, yeah, okay, cool, no sweat. I'm going to have some tea. I'll just make you a cup. He's just not, he's really trying to be a good guy.
This is you.
Yeah, bumbling and all, what do I do with myself?
A woman just appeared at my door.
Mm-hmm. Oh, gosh.
Oh, geez, a girl.
And then he chokes her out and steals her shoes.
And then chokes her out and steals her shoes. That's what you do, right? That's normal. And so don't look in my closet. And so, no, I'm just joking. Tess
I didn't know you wore a size 5.
Yeah. A tiny little. Tess seems kind of uncomfortable as she dials a hotel, and she's raising the phone to her ear, and she asks the operator if they have any rooms available, and she's turned down. She says thanks, and she hangs up, clearly disappointed. Keith circles around the corner and enters the living area, and he tells Tess, you know what, I just realized there's this, huge medical convention in town, and he doubts that she's going to be able to get a room tonight. Tess is looking wary. Keith offers for Tess to crash at the Airbnb, and Tess initially declines, telling him she doesn't think she could. But Keith is a sweetheart, and he insists, and he elaborates that she should take the bedroom, and he can sleep on the couch in the living room. And then he explains that by tomorrow, they can call the property management company, they can file a complaint, and potentially get a free night stay for each of them. Tess tells him that well, she should take the couch. And Keith is a total gentleman, totally old school about it, and he tells Tess there's no way he's going to sleep in the bedroom while a young lady is sleeping on the couch in the living room, and that it's not up for discussion. Study, all you young up-and-comers. And so Tess tells him, no offense, but she has a thing about clean sheets. And so we cut to a shot of a washer in the hallway spinning Keith's sheets. We then cut to an untouched cup of tea on the counter, panning down, revealing Tess sitting at the couch staring at it. It's the tea that Keith made for her. She's still not biting. And Keith enters the front door from outside, and it's pouring rain, and he's drenched in a raincoat, and he's carrying Tess's bags in from her car. And she tells him he didn't have to do that, but he tells her it's not even up for discussion, and she takes the bags from him, and she goes to her room. And so we cut to the interior of the bedroom where Tess shuts the door, and she locks it behind her. Tess puts her luggage on the bed, and she's pulling her phone out and turning to a small dresser across the room, and she spots Keith's wallet lying on top. So Tess grabs his wallet and opens it, and she finds his license, then pulls her phone out and snaps a picture of his license. It's smart girl. It's a potentially dangerous situation. They got double booked, seemingly by coincidence.
Yeah.
But it's this guy she doesn't know.
It's actually smart because if something happens to her, they find her phone.
Yes. And so we cut to the hallway and living area once more, where Tess exits the bedroom with Keith's wallet, and she offers it to him, telling him, you forgot this. And he thanks her and takes it. He's telling her, oh, good eye. Just awkward. She tells him she's going to wash up, and he says, yeah, knock yourself out. We cut to the interior of the bathroom, where Tess is shutting and locking the door behind her. Smart girl. We get a small montage of her brushing her teeth and washing her face and dressing into comfies and whatnot. We cut to the hallway where we see Tess exit the bathroom, and we follow her down the hall. She comes around the corner into the small kitchen, revealing Keith, who sits at a small table with the wine bottle and 2 glasses. He tells Tess that the washer is still going and that he's wide awake, so it's going to be a while now, and he's going to have some of this wine. But he didn't want to open it before she got out of the bathroom because she didn't drink her tea, and he totally gets it, by the way, because she doesn't know him, and this is really weird. And he thought she might want some wine if he opened it while she was here, and he trails off for a moment before bumbling through an apology because he's rambling. Tess kind of stares at him for a second. She's like, I'm good, but you go ahead. And Keith is like, all right, and he begins opening the wine. Tess seems apologetic about him having to sleep on the couch, and Keith tells her that he's slept on worse and that it's no big deal. Tess apologizes for the whole situation, and he tells her it's not her fault and that they're both put out by this whole thing. Keith offers to make her another cup of tea, and she smiles and says no thank you, before quickly putting her smile away. He opens the wine and he pours himself a glass, and he asks her why she's in town, and she tells him she has a job interview for a research position for a documentary filmmaker. And he's intrigued, and he asks who the filmmaker is. Tess tells him the director's name, Catherine James, and Keith doesn't know who the director is. Tess tells him she did a movie about jazz last year called Blue Easy, and Keith quickly realizes, oh, I saw it. And Tess is like, no way. And Keith tells her, yeah, I thought it was great. He says, it's about that makeshift brass band, right? And they do that scene on the roof and they're playing Coltrane. He's like, it was wonderful. Keith asks Tess what Catherine James' next film is going to be about. And she explains it's actually about Detroit, about how numerous artists in the last decade have come to Detroit and set up collectives and creative communities on the outskirts of town, where the houses are basically free. And Keith tells Tess that she should interview him for that documentary, and she amusedly asks why, and he tells her that he's one of the founders of the Lion Tamers. Now, I'm not sure who the hell the Lion Tamers are supposed to be, but they're clearly some artistic or cultural organization. She knows who they are. And now she's like all smiles and asking him what he's doing in this Airbnb, and Keith explains that he's in town looking at different properties for potential places to set up shop. Tess is pleasantly surprised. We cut to a shot of the washer, which is now empty and not running at all, and we can hear Keith and Tess conversing down the hall in the living room as we cut to Keith and Tess looking comfy on the couch together, as Keith pours Tess another glass of wine before pouring himself one as well.
Well, this totally went in the opposite direction.
Yeah, so they're starting to like
She's
each
like,
other
oh,
now.
you're this person. Okay, good. I'll start drinking.
Well, and it's totally related. You know, she's interviewing for this job to be to be part of this documentary that's talking about this very thing that he does. They've clearly been talking for some time now. Like I said, the washer's not even going anymore. And Tess is telling Keith about her recent breakup and how he was controlling. This must be Marcus, because remember, she was swiping Marcus away. He was controlling, and how she found herself becoming some kind of pet, and she's grossed out with herself. And Keith is telling her, yeah, but look at you. You're moving on. You've got this new job. And Tess corrects him and explains that she doesn't have the job yet. And Keith is super smooth and suave and gentlemanly, and he tells Tess that people always try to project some kind of dynamic onto us that serves their own purpose. And it's really up to us whether or not we want to fall for that or not. And Tess tells Keith that she keeps going back to Marcus and she needs to stop going back, and that guys will all just walk all over you. Keith says he gets it, and there's a lot of bad dudes out there. Keith asks Tess if she's going to stay in this toxic dynamic.
Is he a therapist now?
Well, again, he's just this, like, hunky guy, and they're clearly, like, they're a couple glasses in, they're getting along. She's telling him about her ex and shit, and he's like, girl, you got to get out of that. That's toxic shit. And that she could find someone else even if she does get hurt again. And Tess asks him, why is it that girls are always the ones that get their hearts ripped out? And Keith says that girls can rip too. We cut to the bedroom where Keith and Tess are making up Tess's bed with the now clean sheets. It's this cute and funny scene between them where Keith shows Tess this trick to easily getting this case over a duvet. I'm not going to go into it all, but it's very sweet. Tess is all smiling and laughing. Once they're all done, they place the duvet on the bed, and Keith tells her, okay, you're officially situated. And she tells him, yeah, I think that's about it. And they laugh and smile at each other, and they're standing at the foot of the bed, staring at each other for a moment. They're smiling at each other, and you can cut the sexual tension with a knife. They're just kind of standing there. But Tess smiles, and she looks down. She's giving him the cue that it's time to bounce, bud. And so Keith is a gentleman, and he takes the hint, and he thanks her for tonight, and he tells her, sorry for keeping you up before your interview tomorrow. And she tells him no need, that it was fun, and that she liked it. And he says, me too. It's very cute. They clearly like each other. Keith excuses himself and says the couch is waiting. Tess begins to apologize once more, and Keith tells her no need, he can sleep on anything. And they tell each other good night. And Keith smiles and he closes the door. And Tess, in the bedroom now, smiles to herself and she's all giddy. She falls down on her back as the camera pans over to the closed door. We cut to a close-up of Tess, now asleep in the dark of the bedroom. We hear this slow creaking noise, and her eyes open. And there's this sudden, breathless, and quiet screeching. Tess shoots up in bed, and the camera pans over to her bedroom door, and it's sitting open. Keith closed that shit, and she went to bed. Now the lights are out, she wakes up, that shit's open. And it reveals the dark of the hallway and the living area beyond. And we can hear Keith moaning, and Tess leans over in bed just far enough to see Keith asleep on the couch, moving in his sleep as if in a nightmare. Tess slowly exits the bedroom, pacing towards Keith as he continues whimpering and quietly grunting to himself in his sleep. He sounds afraid. Tess calls his name as she approaches, but he doesn't answer. So we focus on a shot of Tess standing in the living area with the dark of the hall behind her, and she exits frame as we have just enough time to see a door all the way down at the end of the hall, very quietly shutting.
Oh, God.
Tess approaches Keith, who's whimpering on the couch, and he's saying, help me. No, no. Tess reaches down, and she says his name again, but he doesn't wake. She finally reaches all the way and touches his arm, and he suddenly wakes up, sitting bolt upright and screaming, scaring the shit out of Tess. Tess screams, and Keith is like, what the fuck? And Tess begins to apologize, and Keith demands to know what she's doing. And she explains that her door was open, and she didn't open it, but she could hear him making noises. And Keith is like, I was making noises? Like, okay. And Tess apologizes again and says she's going to let him sleep. And she asks if he opened her door. Keith kind of yells at Tess, no, before she turns away and goes back to the bedroom. She closes the door behind her and locks it this time, and she gets into bed and kind of sighs to herself, and we're getting the idea that she's feeling like she's blowing it with him. Like they had this nice night, now they have this weird thing, he yelled at her, and she's like, she goes to bed. And we cut to daytime in the bedroom now as Tess lies sleeping on the bed. She wakes, eyeing the door to make sure that it's still locked, which it is, before picking up her phone and realizing that, shit, she's late for her interview. She curses to herself and gets up. And we cut to her exiting into the hallway and calling for Keith, who was nowhere to be found. It's daytime now. And we cut again to the interior of the living area, where Tess is now fully dressed, ready for her interview. And she approaches the coffee table in the living room where Keith has left a note. It reads, hey, I had to run, but please leave the key in the lockbox, and I'll see you this evening. Break a leg today, K. And then it says, P.S. Had a great night last night. And Tess smiles to herself as she reads the note. And we cut to the porch where Tess exits, locking the front door and placing the key in the lockbox. She comes down the steps and onto the sidewalk path as we follow her gaze around the neighborhood. The neighborhood is a lot worse than we were led to believe. It's definitely beyond the outskirts of Detroit. Every house on the block appears abandoned and dilapidated. Crumbling homes with broken windows and painted over with graffiti.
Oh, God, girl, you're in the wrong neighborhood.
It's the only nice, normal-ish looking house
and that's odd.
in the whole place. And there's overgrown lawns and tarp-covered porches and broken-down vehicles everywhere. The Thing from It Follows stands naked and leering in the street. Fucking Mekhi Phifer's setting a house on fire in the background like it's Detroit. And so it's bad. This neighborhood looks worse in the day than at night somehow. We cut to Tess now driving through the neighborhoods, and it's just more of the same, just fucking ruin. And we cut to Tess now in the city of Detroit, looks like downtown, as she parks on the street. And we cut to the interior of a swanky hotel restaurant. Tess sits at a table waiting, and she's on her phone. And we cut to a close-up of her phone where we see that Tess is looking at that picture she took of Keith's license. And she zooms in on his picture and she's smiling to herself. And so she's crushing. And she's greeted by Catherine, the documentary filmmaker. They shake hands and Catherine thanks Tess for making the trip all the way out to Detroit. And we cut to outside of the restaurant through a window where we see Tess and Catherine conversing freely at the table. We then cut to the outside of the restaurant later where Tess and Catherine are now exiting. And it appears like the interview went well. And Catherine asks Tess where she's staying. And Tess hesitantly tells her that she's got an Airbnb in Brightmoor. And Catherine looks shocked and says, "What? Like, are you kidding?" And Tess tells her that she knows it's a little rough, but Catherine tells her plainly, "You shouldn't be there." Tess explains that she tried to find somewhere else to stay, but there's a convention in town and that everywhere is booked, and that she has a roommate. Kind of a weird situation, but she feels safe. Catherine is reluctant to buy it, but she just tells Tess to be careful. So now we cut to a close-up of Tess. She's driving in her car, but we cut to a close-up of a snake charm hanging from the rearview mirror in Tess's car as Tess drives through the decayed and deteriorating slums of Brightmoor. What's interesting to note is that snakes have been traditionally recognized by numerous cultures as a symbol for like transformation and rebirth and healing and change.
Especially the Ouroboros.
Oh, really? What are the Ouroboros?
Is the snake that eats itself.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I didn't, I'd never really realized this. This says a lot about where Tess is at as a character. She's got the snake charm hanging in her window because in this moment, she's fresh from a breakup. She's figuring herself out, what she wants out of life. She's coming to Detroit and she's interviewing for this new job. Now she's got this new job and she's starting this journey. This food for thought later. So we cut to Tess pulling up in her Jeep Cherokee to the front of 476 Barbary. And Tess gets out and opens the back door. She's fishing her bag out of the back seat. And as she does so, we see way off down the street behind her. It's broad daylight. Way off down the street behind her, someone is rapidly approaching. Looks like they're running. Tess shuts the door and turns towards the house, and she sees the figure approaching. And she paces towards the house as the figure shouts, "Hey!" at her. It's a man. And the guy shouts, "Hey, little girl!" And Tess quickens her pace. Yeah. She's like, "Oh, okay, fuck this shit." And she quickens her pace to the front porch. And the man behind her continues running up and yelling at her as she frantically tries to open the front door. But she remembers she has to enter the lockbox code. And Tess is punching in the numbers. And we cut to a close-up of the man's legs as he's running towards her. And it's clearly a homeless fella. And he continues yelling and screaming at her. And Tess finally fishes the key out of the lockbox and unlocks the front door, entering just in time as the homeless man runs up behind her yelling, "Hey, little girl!" Tess slams the door shut, locking it, as the homeless man tells her to come out that house. Tess screams for him to go away. The homeless man yells again, "Come out that house!" And so we cut to Tess packing her things. Fuck this shit.
I get the feeling that he's trying to get her out of the house for a good reason. But we'll get to that.
Yeah. Well done. He says, "Come out that house!" Like that. So it could be taken either way. He tells her to come out, and we cut to Tess packing her things. We cut to her on the phone with the police, and she explains to the operator that she can't see him anymore, and she's looking at the curtains of the living room. And Tess is super panicked, of course, and the operator doesn't seem very sympathetic at all, and she explains to Tess that they don't have any units available at this time, and Tess is shocked, because it's Detroit. Tess is shocked and is like, "Nobody's coming?" And the operator reiterates that, "Ma'am, nobody is available at this time," before we cut to Tess in the bathroom packing her things and once again sits on the toilet to take a piss. And she reaches over and realizes there's no toilet paper.
Oh, no.
So she's looking everywhere. She can't find any toilet paper. And we cut to a shot of Tess standing... We cut to that long shot of the hallway in the house. And we see Tess exiting the laundry room at the back of the hallway. And she stands before another closed door in the back. That same door that shut itself when Keith was screaming in the middle of the night. Tess opens it and enters. And we cut to a shot of Tess standing at the top of a staircase staring down into a basement. The same door that closed last night by itself. She's standing there now and she opens it. She flips a switch on the wall and it turns on a single yellow-orange bulb in the basement.
Yeah.
and it reveals a large pack of toilet paper on an old washer at the bottom of the stairs. So Tess trots down to the stairs and retrieves a roll of toilet paper before heading back up. And as she does so, the door at the top of the stairs leading into the hall suddenly shuts by itself. Tess grabs it and tries opening it. It's locked. She tries over and over again to no avail. So now she sits on the basement stairs and thinks, and she's looking exasperated. And we cut to a shot of Tess's phone on a dresser in their bedroom before cutting back to Tess. She's reaching into her pocket. She's realizing, oh shit, my phone's in the dresser. Then we cut to a shot of the open lockbox outside because remember, she was in a panic. She came and got the key and fucking got inside. And we cut back to her checking her pockets. She has the key. So she's stuck in the basement. It's locked. She has no phone. And she has the one key that Keith can use to get in. She curses to herself, and we cut to her standing on top of an old paint bucket and looking up through a single small basement window. She can see out into the front lawn, and she's at eye level with the yard. And so she begins searching around the basement and finding that nothing will be of any use to her whatsoever. And she continues searching, and she eyeballs a shelf with a small duck statue on the wall. She's like, looks at it, and she moves the duck statue, revealing a hole in the wall with a length of rope sticking out of it. A small hole, just big enough for this length of rope. Tess grabs the rope, momentarily toying with it before she begins to pull it. And as she pulls it further and further out, a door built into the wall next to her opens, just like a stone wall. So it's pitch black inside, and we get this shot from Tess's perspective, looking at the doorway and the utter darkness inside. It's fucking terrifying. And Tess says nope to herself, and we cut to her now sitting again on the basement steps thinking. The door in the wall beyond her is still propped open as she sits thinking. And we
she shits thinking?
As she sits thinking. Oh, my bad. As she sits thinking. And so, because she's a bitch who sits, she's not a girl that poops. And so,
bitch that shits, not a bitch that sits.
Mm-hmm. So
you're fucking all it up.
Yeah, I'm fucking it up. So we see Tess in the basement now, and she's found a mirror, and she's dragging it to the center of the room beneath that single yellow-orange bulb, and she angles the mirror just so, pointing it into the dark of the doorway that she just opened. So she's using the mirror to reflect the light into the dark of that doorway to see what's in there. It's just enough light to see that it's a long hallway with what looks like another door way down at the end.
What the fuck?
Tess props the mirror against a chair so that the light still shines into the dark, and she slowly heads inside, and we watch as she disappears into the dark. Tess makes her way to the end of the hallway and opens that door. It's pitch black inside. She finds a light switch, flipping it on, revealing a small and unfinished room. It's like cement walls and wood beams along the wall and ceiling, like supporting the structure. And there is a dirty and worn brown-stained mattress on a metal bed frame against the wall, and there's a single camera on a tripod next to it, and Tess eyes the camera, and she's eyeing the bed, and then she eyes a small bucket on the floor splattered with some sort of dark matter. It's fucking disgusting. Tess steps a foot into the room, and she turns to the wall, and she sees a bloody handprint on the wall, and Tess is like, deuces, and takes off. Fuck this shit. And she takes off running down the hall back into the basement she came from, and she enters the basement, and there's a sudden loud knocking upstairs. And suddenly she turns to the basement window and she runs up to it and begins slapping it. We see that it's Keith outside, and she begins yelling for him as she continues banging on the window. And Keith spots her, and he kind of chuckles to himself from the front yard, and he's like, what the fuck? Before cutting back to the interior upstairs of 476 Barbary. Keith has freed Tess. They're in the living room together now. She's understandably tripping balls, and she's telling Keith that they got to get out of the house. And Keith is like, what are you talking about? And she tells him that she was locked in the basement, and she found a hidden room, and there's something bad going on here. And he says, well, what's down there? What did you see? And she said she was down in the basement, and she found a hidden passageway, and she found a room like a dungeon. And Keith asks what was in there, and she tells Keith there was a bed and a camera and a bucket. And Keith is like, okay, so there's a bed and a bucket and a camera. Cool. And she's like, yes. And he's like, okay, I'm just going to go look. And Tess is telling him, no, don't go down there. There was a handprint on the wall. And he tells her to calm down. He goes like, so what? There was a room downstairs with a bed and a bucket in it. Like, it's a basement filled with junk. Like, what do you...
This guy's way too chill. I'm sorry.
Well, he doesn't understand what she's trying to. She's
trying to explain it, but she's not explaining it right.
It looks like a fucking rape scene down there or something, like a snuff film.
But he's not getting that.
And he's just like, okay, whatever, I'll go look. Tess says he can go look if he wants, but she's ducking out, and she goes to the bedroom and begins gathering her purse and her bags. And Keith clearly likes her. She's making her way to the front door, and Keith steps in front of her and he tells her to stop. And she tries to go around him, and he keeps telling her to stop and just give him a moment. He's like, look, I'm sorry if I'm not taking this seriously, but I didn't see what you saw, and I can't just go off in a panic because there's a room downstairs with a bed and a bucket in it. And Tess makes her way around him and goes for the front door as Keith apologizes, and he's like, look, I'm sorry. And he tells her he just wants to see what she's talking about and that she doesn't have to come with him. And he tells her, look, please just wait up here in case I get locked in downstairs. And Tess is hesitant, but she agrees. And he tells her it'll take 30 seconds. And he heads down the hall and into the basement. And Tess watches him go. Tess is upstairs. It's quiet. And after a few moments, she puts her bags in the bedroom and makes her way to the basement door, now standing at the top of the basement steps. And she calls for Keith and asks if he sees the room. He says he does. She tells him to come back up, and he doesn't answer. She calls for him heading down the stairs, and we see the door at the top of the stairs begin to shut by itself again before Tess spots it this time, and she comes running back up and she jars it open, and we see her grabbing a small chair from the dining room, and she places it in front of the door, holding it open. Tess then heads down into the basement into that black doorway, and she calls for Keith, but he doesn't answer. She pulls her phone out of her pocket and turns the flashlight on because she's got her phone now, and she's slowly making her way down the hall to this apparent dungeon. And she slowly comes down the hall and enters the room, and he's not in there.
Wait, what?
He's not in there. And she gets down to her knees, and she's checking under the bed. He's nowhere to be found. She then rises again and exits back into the dark of the hallway, and she appears confused, and she begins shining her light along the walls of this hallway. And behind her and next to the doorway of the dungeon, she finds a wooden door. Another door built into the wall in this hallway.
Oh my god.
So Tess slowly opens the door, revealing another set of stairs heading even further down.
What the?
Into what looks like a cave of sorts. And the shot of the stairs heading down into the dark is absolutely terrifying, by the way. Wonderfully done. Tess stands at the top of the stairs, and she's shining the light from her phone down, and she's calling for Keith numerous times. For some reason, she doesn't hear anything before she finally faintly hears him from far, far away, screaming for help. And she calls for him to come up, and she hears him scream once more for her to please help him. Tess turns back, and she stares down that black hall at the mirror that she had propped up, shining light into the darkness. And she stares into the doorway of the basement, pondering for a moment, before eventually turning back to the stairs leading to Keith. So she turns around, and you can see her going, fuck, I could just leave now. I could just duck out right now. And then she turns back, and she's like, nah, I gotta go get him. So she heads down into the cave. The angle of the stairs appear drastically sharp, but she's walking down the steps through this like cave, and it looks like stone that was dug through, like it truly. So it's like stone walls all around her. And Tess finally makes her way to the bottom of the stairs, where she finds this tall sliding wrought iron gate, large wooden support beams all along the cave walls and ceiling. It looks like something out of a Resident Evil underground dwelling.
Yeah.
Like
gotcha.
when you're,
I know
you know
exactly,
what I mean?
Yep.
Yes. She slides the gate open, and she heads further into this dwelling. And as she heads on, she finds 4 large cages on the ground, each one of them with a dirty dog dish inside.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. She whimpers to herself and passes them, continuing on. She's screaming for Keith. She's panicked and crying now. The light from her phone barely lights the tunnel ahead of her as she presses on. It's so dark, and she's calling for him to answer. Keith suddenly rushes out of the darkness on all fours towards Tess, who screams wildly. And Keith tells her, shh, and he motions for her to come to him. And she does come to him, and she's kneeling down to him, and she's asking him, why did you come down here? And he's trying to quiet her down, and he whispers, someone else is down here. And she's like, what? And Keith tells her, someone bit me. And she stares at him for a second before saying, okay, we need to go. And Keith tells her, no, don't go that way. That's where they were. And Tess is arguing with him. She's like, no, that's the way out. I just came from this way. And Keith swears it's not the way out. They need to head back where he came from. And she's pleading and screaming at him. They need to go this way, the way that she came from. And he begins yelling at her, telling her someone's down here and that he's not going back the way she came. And there's a sudden wilding screeching as this towering, naked, deformed and monstrous-looking woman comes charging out of the dark behind Keith. And Tess shovels back as the woman grabs Keith by the head, slamming his face into the cave walls over and over and over and over, like Pappin style and then some, bro. It's fucking brutal and ruthless.
So he's
dead. She's bashing his face into the wall, and it's just hamburger meat. And you can hear his skull crushing and his flesh squelching all wet. It's awful. And the woman...
Okay, because I was like, he was a red herring.
Definitely. And so the woman throws Keith's body to the floor before turning to Tess, who stands in shock and fear, the light from her phone illuminating this monster before her, this monster towering over her. And this woman screams at Tess before we cut to black.
She's an Amazonian.
Dude, she's big. She's big.
Death by Snoo Snoo big?
Huh? Who?
Futurama?
Oh, I don't know.
Death by Snoo Snoo?
I don't remember. I've seen Futurama.
It was an episode of Family... It was a Family Guy. Episode of Futurama where they end up on a planet where it's a bunch of Amazon women, and these women are like as big as you're saying, but like thick thighs, or whatever. And they say death by Snoo Snoo. They're like, "What's death by Snoo Snoo?" And it's basically where
what the heck?
Jackhammer on.
That couldn't be the worst thing.
What happens is they look over. He's like, that person died by Snoo Snoo. And you look over, and it's a male skeleton, but its pelvis is just shattered.
He's all...
He's like this. But his it's just...
Lower half is just obliterated.
Yeah.
I still say there's worse ways to go. Yeah, probably. She's tall like...
She's big.
She's a tall gal. She's fucking towering over
like Lady
Tess.
Dimitrescu from the latest...
Thank you. That tall. She's big.
She's 8 feet tall.
But she's not like curvy and like delicious. She's like she's like got the long, gross limbs, and she's dirty, and she's got this hanging, gross hair, and just
hag.
Yeah. So we cut to black, and we sit in that dark for a moment before Rikki Tikki Tavi by Donovan suddenly kicks on the soundtrack, and it's super catchy and upbeat, and we cut to the ocean. And it's a bright and beautiful day. And it's almost like a completely different movie now.
What the fuck?
Exactly. And Donovan is advising us that we'd better get into what we got to get into as we pan over to see that we are on the California coastline. And a highway runs along the edge of the water. And there's a single red convertible driving along. We cut to AJ, played by Justin Long of... Zach and Miri Make a Porno fame. Justin Long, I know a lot of people would probably know him as the brother from Jeepers Creepers. You and I talked about this. He's done a number of comedies and action and horror. He was in a horror movie that Kevin Smith wrote and directed called Tusk. It's wonderful. We talked about this on the last episode. He and his brother also did a segment for VHS Beyond. Fur Babies. So Justin Long,
still haven't seen that yet, by the way.
Oh man, you got to watch it. So we're cutting to AJ. He's played by Justin Long. He's driving the convertible, this little red convertible along the highway, and he's singing along with Donovan. The song is so groovy and catchy, and Justin is so good at playing this guy that's like so happy to be listening to it, and he's driving along the California coast, and he's just loving life, and he's nodding his head along to the snare. And this part is great because in less than 15 seconds, we as the audience are already beginning to love this guy. He's driving along and he's singing and he knows the song well, and the song is suddenly interrupted by the ring of his phone connected to the car stereo.
Is this Marcus?
No, this is AJ. AJ.
Oh, okay.
Marcus is the ex-boyfriend, but good guess. AJ answers and he's all in a good mood, and a secretary tells him that she has David Stern and Melissa Herbert on the line for AJ, and AJ's all, love it! Keeps fucking driving, you know? The secretary says, guys, you're on with AJ. So AJ is greeted on the phone by David Stern and Melissa Herbert. And they say hello, and David tells AJ they need to discuss something that's just come up. And AJ is like, sure, what's up? And Melissa jumps in and tells him that this is a bit of an awkward conversation, but there's been a troubling development. And from AJ's conversation with David and Melissa, we're learning that he's an actor who has currently filmed a pilot for a new sitcom that's been picked up by a network, and that one of his co-stars, Megan Maddox, has contacted the network through her lawyer, and she's claiming that AJ was sexually aggressive with her during the filming of the pilot, and she no longer wants to move forward with the show if he's involved.
What
And
the hell is going on in this movie? It's just something.
so we just cut to a completely different story, right? You had Keith and you've got Tess, and there's that whole mix-up at the Airbnb.
Yeah.
Is this guy safe? Is he not? What's going on?
Okay.
And then eventually we find the downstairs dungeon, and that woman fucking obliterates Keith. He was a good guy after all. There's something going on down here. Why is this monstrous thing down here, right? Ah! Screams at Tess. We cut to black. We cut to the ocean, and now it's almost like a new movie. And we've got AJ. He's an actor. He's filmed this pilot. He's all in a good mood, fucking loving life. And his agents tell him, look, man, you're being accused of sexual assault. Megan Maddox no longer wants to be involved with the show if you are. And he's like, wait, what? And Melissa on the phone informs him that the network is taking it very seriously and that they're going to start an investigation. And AJ is starting to panic, and he's like, what about the pilot? Are we not getting picked up anymore? David cuts in on the phone. He tells AJ, look, man, honestly, the most likely outcome is that you're going to be let go from the show. And AJ's floored. He's like, I'm fired? Before David reiterates that this is the most likely outcome. AJ quietly says to himself, that fucking bitch. Before going, wait a minute, you guys. This is totally blown out of proportion. And Melissa cuts in and says, it's likely in his best interest not to go into details on this call. So based upon that comment alone, they must be his agents. Don't go into details on this call. And AJ is like, what the fuck does that mean, Melissa? And David tells him he needs to calm down before Melissa interjects that they should tell him the other thing. And David argues with her saying, no, he just needs to cool down right now. We'll tell him another time. And AJ is like, what other thing? Melissa informs AJ that there will be a story about this incident in the Hollywood Reporter tomorrow, and that the allegations that Megan Maddox is making are very serious. And AJ asks, well, what is she saying that I did? Is she saying that I raped her? Melissa says, yes, she's saying that you raped her. AJ's mouth is hanging open as he's driving on in total shock. And after a moment, David asks if AJ's still there, and he tells him he'll have to call them back. And AJ pulls his vehicle off the highway onto a gravel shoulder on the side of the road, and he sits in the driver's seat staring out, and we cut to his perspective staring out at the ocean. There's no more Donovan on the soundtrack. It's not a bright and happy day anymore, and we as the audience really don't know how to feel about this guy anymore. So we cut to the interior of AJ's financial advisor's office. His financial advisor is named Jeff. Jeff is sitting at his desk, going over AJ's finances on his computer, and AJ sits across from him, leaned back in his chair, and he's looking uneasy. And Jeff and AJ both believe it's safe to assume that there will be no new income through the end of the year. You're clearly not going to be making any more money from here on out. How are we going to do this? Jeff asks AJ what his legal expenses are going to be, and AJ says for 2 cases, the first being the charge against him, which he claims is 100% not true, by the way, and the second being his countersuit against her for defamation, that he 100% is going to win, and that it should be about $70,000 each, so about $140,000 total in legal expenses alone. And Jeff does some financial crunching on the computer and informs AJ that at his current rate of spending, AJ is going to be out of money in 3 months. Jeff informs him that his mortgage in LA, his house in LA, is what's killing him financially, despite, he's got some small income from his properties in Michigan. And he tells AJ that AJ is going to have to make some tough financial decisions. AJ argues that he could sell his Michigan properties, and Jeff counters that they're not exactly hot properties, and the sales would buy him a couple months, maybe. AJ is having a hard time taking the news, and Jeff then informs him, look, man, at the end of the week, I'm going to give you your files back. And AJ is like, cool, what does that mean? And Jeff advises him that he should find alternate wealth management. So Jeff is dropping him as a client. So we cut to AJ toting luggage through an airport terminal, scrolling on his phone. He suddenly stops, saying to himself, fuck me, before we cut to a close-up of his phone, and he's looking at a story from the Hollywood Reporter that reads, AJ Gilbride accused of sexual misconduct. Chip off the block pilot not moving forward. We cut to AJ in the airport parking lot in the garage, and he's on his phone with his lawyer, Robert, and he's discussing the article all pissed, and AJ finds his rental and gets inside, and he puts his lawyer on speaker once he's in the car and says, well, look, he's talking to his lawyer, and he says, well, what if I call Megan Maddox and I just apologize? I feel like we can just nip this whole thing in the bud. And his lawyer advises absolutely not, that at no point should he communicate with Megan Maddox. Robert then stops talking and he goes, wait a minute, did you just say you're getting into a rental? And AJ tells Robert, yeah, that he's in Detroit. To which Robert replies, AJ, you weren't supposed to leave the state. That AJ should be in town in case of any developments.
Oh my God.
And AJ's like, what, do you think they're going to arrest me? And Robert, his lawyer, tells him it's entirely possible, and flying away to another state is not a good look right now. And AJ explains that he's
let me guess, this guy's an idiot at this point, because
AJ?
That's true. He shouldn't have left.
AJ's a big dipshit. Big time. But he's Justin Long, so we love him. He explains he's not on vacation or fleeing town. He's trying to sell property and make money to survive. And we cut to the interior of a rental property office where AJ walks in and approaches the secretary at the front desk. And she's kind of snooty, and she asks him for his name, and AJ gives it back to her all snooty. And he's telling her he's there to pick up a set of keys.
Oh my God.
It's here that we learn that AJ is the owner of 476 Barbary.
I was about to say, he's the owner, isn't he?
He's the owner. We learn that he's the owner, and we cut to the exterior of 476 Barbary.
Oh, by the way, I was just looking up where I could watch it, so I'm going to watch it later. So I'm like, I got to watch this.
It's so good. It's so good. We cut to the exterior of 476 Barbary. We're on the inside of Tessa's car looking out. It's dusk. It's getting dark. We're focused in on that snake charm hanging from her rearview window. We watch through the front windshield as AJ pulls in front of her car, and he parks, and he gets out of his vehicle. It's this pussy-ass little Nissan Leaf. He gets out, and he's got his luggage in hand, and he approaches Tessa's car. He's kind of looking inside, and then he heads to the front porch, and he heads inside. And inside 476 Barbary, it's dark. AJ shuts the front door behind him, and he drops his luggage, immediately spotting the propped open door leading to the basement, because if we remember, Tess propped it open before she went back down.
Oh, Lord.
Mm-hmm. So he sees it, and he's like, the fuck? And he removes the chair and kicks the door shut all pissed. And we cut to AJ taking a piss where he notices the toiletry bag on the sink. AJ then walks into the bedroom, noting the luggage and that it's clearly been used. And he's like, what the fuck, dude? And he's poking his head out into the hallway and searching with his eyes. And he goes, hello? And there's no answer. We then cut to AJ pacing the living area.
You know what's really weird? It's property management, right? Mm-hmm. They should have came and cleaned it already.
Exactly. We're going to get to that.
Oh.
He's pacing the living area, and he's on the phone with Bonnie from the property management company. From their conversation, we see that AJ's clearly pissed and frustrated that someone is staying in his house. He asks Bonnie if anybody's staying there, and she replies, no, there haven't been any tenants for a couple of weeks now.
Wait, hold on. Is that telling us it's been a couple of weeks since...
Yep.
Oh.
So it's been a couple of weeks since we last saw Tess.
Oh, God.
Since Keith got his face bashed into the fucking... So he's pissed, and he goes, why hasn't a maid service come through? Why didn't I know about this sooner? And Bonnie explains that maid services only come through when there's a booking for new tenants. And AJ's like, what the fuck kind of system is that? It's fucking idiotic. To which Bonnie replies, have a nice day, and she hangs up on him.
That's my daughter.
She's like, yeah. Good job, Bonnie. You don't take that shit. Bonnie replies, have a nice day, and she hangs up on him. AJ is still on the phone. He doesn't realize that she's hung up, but he's like, who the fuck is staying in my house? Hello? So we see him poking his head out the front door, and he sees the open lockbox, and he's like, dude. We cut to the bathroom where AJ is washing his face, and he's on the phone with his mom. And mom is talking about the article, and what are your father and I supposed to say to people? And AJ is a total snot, and he tells his mom to tell people that Megan Maddox is a lying fucking little bitch. Mom doesn't want it.
Now I got a question, though. Is he actually guilty of this stuff, or is... Oh, I gotta listen. Okay.
We're gonna find out. He's a total snot. He's rude to his mom. He's very short and just shitty with her, and she's clearly all sweet, honey, and this and that.
Here we go.
And he's like, well, she's a lying little fucking bitch. And mom tells him she shouldn't be talking like that, and it's not nice to talk like that. AJ counters that ruining his reputation and career isn't nice either. Mom just loves him, and she knows that he would never do those things, that she and his father just want to see him. And AJ's like, really? Dad wants to see me? Like he said that? And mom replies, she's like, well, you know how he is. He's upset. So there's, he's just this little brat. AJ gets a call on his phone, and he tells his mom that he's got to go. He's getting a call from work. And she's like, okay, baby, well, I love you. As AJ hangs up on her without
Didn't even say, well, I love you.
Yeah. Okay, baby, I love you. And he's like, click. He answers that incoming call that he interrupted mom for, right? We cut to the interior of a busy bar, and it's this single shot. It's just one shot, the whole scene, focused on AJ and his buddy Eli, who's actually played by the director himself, Zach Kreger from Whitest Kids You Know. So Eli, the director, he's asking AJ, he's kind of talking loud, can we just real talk for a moment? And long story short, he wants to know what really happened. He wants the truth, and he wants to hear it from his friend, that he's read the online articles and he's heard all this and that. What happened? And AJ's got his drink in his hand, and he's clearly got a buzz on, and he levels with Eli. He's like, yeah, Megan and I had sex, all right? And he goes, but she just took some convincing is all. And
oh my God.
And Eli asks did she say no, to which AJ replies, well, at first she did, and we have to endure this drunken ramble where AJ tries to justify the fact that he clearly raped this girl, that at first she wasn't down, but after some convincing they had sex, and that he's a persistent guy and he's all eye of the tiger. But it's clear to us more than ever that AJ is, as a matter of fact, a piece of shit. Judging by the look in his eyes, we can see that as he's explaining this, he knows it too. Like, he himself can't even believe the lie as he's telling this to his friend. It's wonderful acting. And so we cut back to the interior of the house in Barbary, where drunken AJ stumbles in, and he's dialing on his phone, and he's hanging up a coat. We hear, hi, this is Megan, leave a message. Exactly what his lawyer said not to do. Mm-hmm. So AJ calls this girl, and he leaves this voicemail saying that she probably doesn't want to talk to him, but that he's really sorry if he did anything to have offended her, and that people can have different versions of the same thing, and that he's not even mad at her. He's not even mad at her. And for her to please call him back, and he'll apologize to her again. He's fucking obliterated, smashed, drunk. And he hangs up. And we cut to AJ in bed the next day, sunshine flooding his room. And then we see AJ throwing up into a toilet and leaning back and sitting on the bathroom floor, clutching his head. And he opens his eyes and looks over, and Keith's electric toothbrush is still plugged in on the floor. And we cut to the bedroom where AJ begins opening and rifling through Keith's belongings, and he finds a copy of Jane Eyre, briefly examining it before tossing it aside.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, and that novel is a super important historical novel about this woman's transformation from childhood to adulthood.
Oh, yeah, I know of it.
All the trials and tribulations she endures in finding herself. So it's funny because it works on this level of tragedy where this book belonged to Keith, who in the very least was an intellectual.
He was a feminist.
Well, in the very least, he was intellectually curious.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily a feminist, but he's reading this book, this historical book.
Yeah.
In the very least, he's an intellectual, but at most, he's somebody who would have understood and loved Tess for who she was. But now we as the audience are stuck with this piece of shit who finds the book and just tosses it aside, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so AJ finds nothing, and he begins rifling through the other bags before finding a small laptop. He opens it. It's Tess's. He tries a password before fucking tossing the laptop against the wall carelessly. He's just such an asshole. We then see AJ in the kitchen fixing himself a cup of coffee and sitting down at the kitchen table where he spots a set of keys. And he's still in a t-shirt and boxers. And AJ leans back in his chair, and he looks down the hall at the closed door leading to the basement. And AJ approaches the door and enters, and he's calling down the basement stairs and asks if somebody's here. He's going, hello? And there's a sudden and loud crashing coming deep from downstairs. And it makes AJ jump. He pauses momentarily before threatening that he has a gun, and he's going to come down and open up on whoever he sees in 30 seconds.
Doesn't have no gun.
No, he does not. He doesn't get an answer, and he yells that he's not fucking around, whoever's down there. So we cut to AJ in the bedroom, and he's getting dressed, and he's tying his shoes, and he's pep talking himself. He's saying shit like, fucking come to my house and hide in my fucking basement. he's like,
like you would do?
Yeah. Like I do all the time.
And then you go down there and go,
calling you, Richard, come get me. No, fuck no.
I've seen horror movies. The black man dies first. No, thank you.
So he's in his bedroom pep talking himself, and he's going, fucking come into my house and hide in my fucking basement. I'm a fucking man. I'll fuck you up. And he's trying to hype himself up. He barely believes himself. We don't believe him either. And AJ fishes a tiny limp dick knife out of the kitchen. And it's like
a paring knife?
Yeah, it's a little nothing like a fish knife. Not even. Yeah, probably a paring knife, yeah. And he leaves satisfied with his choice of defense. And he goes back to the top of the basement steps. Yeah, this guy's so inept. He goes back to the top of the basement steps and he's got his knife and his flashlight.
If he lives,
He's got his knife and his flashlight, and he yells down, "Last chance!" before making his way down. And he says, "All right, bitch, get ready to get fucked," which is funny because he's like talking to himself and trying to be a tough guy. But it's also like so cringy to hear him say that because this dude is a rapist. And Zach Kreger is not letting us forget that as much as we love this actor. So AJ makes his way down, and it's dark in the basement now, and he's shining his flashlight around, and he finds the mirror that Tess propped up in the center of the room, and he's kind of looking at it. And he hears another sudden thud coming from the wall behind him, and he spins around, and he's frantically searching with his eyes, and he spots the rope in the wall, and he approaches it, and he grabs it, and slowly starts pulling it. The door in the wall slowly opens, once again revealing that pitch dark hallway. AJ's flashlight barely casts a glow, making it just visible enough to see, like mere feet in front of him. He heads down the hallway before finding the dungeon, and we see him enter, and he's turning his light all around the room, looking all shocked. And we think he's in shock having found this, like having this oh my gosh moment, right? And we suddenly cut to the search engine on AJ's laptop where he types, "Can underground rooms be listed as square footage?" He's seated in the kitchen. He's researching online. He's finding out how much money he can squeeze out of this place. To his disappointment, he finds that below-grade spaces don't usually count towards the listed square footage, but he's optimistic, and he's saying, "Okay, usually," and he keeps looking. And he continues his online search before finding, he reads out loud that an unfinished underground dwelling can be noted separately in a listing's total area. So, in other words, the rooms downstairs can technically add value to the house. And AJ is like, "Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, bitch."
I think anybody would be doing that. Like, yeah.
Well, it's just so ironic because there's all this horrible shit going on. So we cut back down to the basement, and AJ is now measuring the length of the hallway and the dimensions of the dungeon.
He's got a tape measure?
Yep.
Does he really?
Yes.
Oh my God.
He's measuring, and he's paying literally zero attention whatsoever to the fact that there's a bloodstained mattress and a camera and some disgusting bucket in the corner. He's just not putting it together. And he wanders back out into that dark hall where he finds the second doorway leading down into those caverns, right? And he sees it and he's psyched. He's like, "Oh shit." And he begins measuring the distance from the top of the stairs and starts to head down into the cavern with his flashlight in hand. And down in the caverns where we last saw Tess and Keith, AJ continues measuring, and he's walking along, and he yells, asking if anybody's here, and he doesn't get an answer. AJ finds those human-sized cages, and he briefly kind of ponders to himself what the hell they are before continuing on his quest. The more distance he measures...
How long is this tape measure?
Yeah, exactly. Well, he put it at the top of the steps of this set of steps, and so the more distance that he measures, the more excited...
How far down does it go? Wait.
Because we...
No, the stairs. Like, when he walks down the stairs, like, how far down is it?
Oh, I don't know. It's a set of stairs. Like it's a
just
set
a
of stairs.
flight of stairs?
Yeah, it looks like a couple flights. Looks pretty deep.
Once again, I ask, how long is this goddamn tape measure?
Pretty fucking long, apparently. And so, the more distance he's measuring, the more excited he gets about the resale value. AJ is deep in the caverns now, and he turns, and he spots an open doorway down the way, and it's emitting a soft purple glow. And he kind of shines his flashlight at the doorway, and he's yelling, "Hello?" There's no answer, of course. So AJ slowly approaches, coming around the corner and looking into a dimly lit concrete room. There's soiled blankets all over the floor, and along the far wall, there's a small TV VCR combo. You remember those?
Oh, yeah.
TV with a VCR built in? Me too. Absolutely. Bordello of Blood days, dude.
I had a TVR VCR DVD combo.
He sees that TV and VCR combo on the floor, and it's playing this instructional breastfeeding video, and it looks like it's from the early 80s. It's like, it's got the production quality of those videos like you used to watch in middle school sex ed, grainy music like that. And so it's this woman breastfeeding her child, and AJ is like kind of disturbed at what he's found. It's this breastfeeding video in the middle of this dirty ass dingy room with soiled blankets on the floor, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And suddenly the tape measure in his hand suddenly releases, and it's now winding back into itself, and he's holding it it's going rushing at him, and AJ lets it go, and it goes scattering into the dark back the way that he came from. AJ points his knife and his flashlight down the long cavern, and we cut to his perspective, and we can literally see his arm sticking out with the flashlight and the knife.
Like a video game?
Yes. exactly like
First
a video
person.
game. Yeah, like Stork, basically. And he's looking down the hall. His flashlight only illuminates so far before being swallowed up by the darkness. And AJ hears this muffled sound and turns away, running further into the caverns. The flashlight is his only source of light. And he runs around a corner, and after a moment, he trips and he drops the flashlight, and he is now in pitch darkness. And AJ falls to the ground, and he's stumbling along for the flashlight before he finds it, but it won't turn on, and he has to knock it with his hand. You ever have to do that to fucking get the flashlight to, yeah. And he's knocking it with his hand, and the flashlight is kind of sporadically turning on for a second, then back off, and he's knocking it on, back off, and he's pointing it into the caverns, into the direction he just came from, where the measuring tape suddenly started spooling back, and the light keeps turning off and on and off and on. It's dimly illuminating this cavern before immersing AJ back into darkness, and AJ hears a distant growl, and the flashlight briefly clicks on, and it's illuminating the woman way off in the distance coming towards him, that big towering woman, off and on, off and on. She's slowly approaching.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And suddenly she's right in front of AJ, growling at him, and AJ gets up and runs further into the dark before suddenly falling through the floor. And we see that he's fallen into a hole, and there's a rusted steel grate at the top of the opening that he fell through. He looks up at the grate, and it swings shut, locking him in. And AJ is panicking to himself.
Death by snoo.
Yeah, exactly. And AJ is panicking to himself as Tess suddenly comes into frame from the darkness, and she's telling AJ to shh. She's all dirty. So she's been down in this hole.
Oh, she's alive. Oh.
Yeah, she's alive. And so we cut to the exterior of 476 Barbary. It's daytime, years ago. The houses on Barbary are lived in and well cared for. They're painted bright Easter colors, well-manicured lawn, and Heat of the Moment by Asia, you know that song?
Yep.
It is playing quietly from a radio in the distance. And so we're getting the idea that this is the early 80s sometime.
Okay.
And we see a man exit the house, locking the door behind him, 476 Barbary. And he comes down the steps, and he's approaching the camera, and he turns and enters his car parked in front of his home. And we enter with him. This man is Frank, played by Richard Brake. He's tall and lanky, rail thin, kind of grizzled-looking older fella. Looks like the type of guy that like chain smokes and works on cars. And so Frank starts his car and drives through his neighborhood, and we're in the back seat of his car, and he's giving the occasional passing wave to random neighbors as he does so. And then we cut to Frank shopping the interior of a small department store, pushing a shopping cart, and he approaches a woman in a work apron who asks if he's finding everything okay, and he asks for plastic sheets, and she tells him aisle 7. And he says diapers and baby stuff, and she says infant needs are this way, come on, I'll show you where. And on the way she asks him how old his little one is, and he says it's not here yet. The department store worker, this woman, comments that it's such an exciting time, and Frank tells her it's a home birth, and she sympathetically exclaims, oh, bless your hearts. Him and this apparent mom. Bless your hearts, as they approach the baby aisle, and she begins grabbing stuff off the shelves for Frank. Diapers, latex gloves. She grabs a VHS off the shelf, and she hands it to Frank, titled Your Newborn and You.
Oh,
and
no.
So
it's coming together.
Yes, it is. She hands it to him, and he's like looking at the cover before we cut to the exterior of the store where Frank approaches his vehicle, and he's got his shopping bags in his arms. Frank loads up the bags into the back of his trunk before shutting it and sliding into the driver's seat up front. Frank then spots a pretty young woman loading shopping bags into the back of her car nearby, and he backs out of his parking space, and he's watching her as she closes her trunk and she enters the front seat. And he sits parked just watching her until she takes off, and then he follows her pace. We cut to Frank parked in some neighborhood sitting inside of his car, now watching from nearby as the young woman has taken the shopping bags out of her car and she enters her home. Frank shuts his car off, heading back to his trunk and opening it once more. There's a large bag of tools and a pair of coveralls with the name tag Carlos on them.
Uh-huh.
And so we cut to Frank approaching the young woman's front porch, and he's dressed in the coveralls, and he's got the tools, and he knocks on her door. Frank shuts the car off, and he puts the mechanic coveralls on, and the name tag says Carlos. We cut to him approaching her front porch. He's dressed in the coveralls. He's got the tools. He knocks on her door, and she answers. It's this beautiful young woman in a sundress, just gorgeous and super friendly. Frank apologizes for bothering her, but that he's with Detroit Water and Power, and that there have been some outages in the neighborhood recently. He'd like to check her home and make sure everything is up to speed. Ladies,
No!
fellas, everyone, don't just let somebody in your frickin' house, no matter who they say they are or what they're wearing, or you don't just, come on in. You don't have an appointment, motherfucker. And
I wasn't notified of this.
yeah, and that's that. You can't just...
Hold on. I'm going to shut the door. I'm going to go call them real quick.
She lets him in, and we cut to Frank, and he's entering the bathroom of this woman's house, where he turns on the faucet before unlocking a large bathroom window. Then he turns the faucet back off and he exits. We see him briefly approach the young woman in her kitchen where she looks like she's preparing dinner, and he thanks her for her time, and she asks if he found any problems, and he said it looks fine, but to give them a call if there's any problems and to have a nice day. And he then exits her home, and we cut to the exterior of 476 Barbary later that day, where Frank pulls up, still dressed in his Carlos coveralls, and he exits his vehicle. His next door neighbor, Doug, played by Kurt Braunohler, I believe is how you say it. Kurt Braunohler calls to Frank and approaches him. Kurt is actually a stand-up comedian and writer and voice actor. Have you seen Bob's Burgers?
Yep.
Okay, he's the kid in the first season that stole Luis's rabbit ears.
Oh, okay.
Okay, he's very good at playing a friendly and straight edge, kind of a square of a bumbling dad next door. And so he comes up to Frank and he says, hey, just wanted to tell you personally before you find out from somebody else, tomorrow there's going to be a for sale sign in our front yard. And Doug explains to Frank that Doug and his family are selling and moving out, that the wife thinks that if we wait till next year, nobody's going to want to buy, that the neighborhood is going to hell. And Frank looks at him and then walks away without saying a word. And he heads back to his trunk and begins opening it as Doug follows him. And Doug asks, well, you plan on staying? To which Frank replies that he's not going anywhere. And then we cut to the interior of 476 Barbary, looking very dated, very much a product of the 70s and 80s. And not only that, but the place is a mess. There's knocked over chairs and towels and garbage and brooms and just general clutter everywhere. Frank enters his home, grocery bags in his arms, and he heads down the hallway. And he opens the door to the basement at the end of the hallway, and we suddenly begin to hear distant screaming. Frank enters and closes the door behind him as we cut back to present day. So down in the caverns, AJ and Tess are still trapped in that hole, and AJ wants to know where the fuck they are. And Tess tells him she doesn't know where they are and that it's extremely important that he stays calm, that he cannot freak out that woman. And they hear her approaching above, and Tess begins whispering, telling AJ that he cannot get upset, that if he gets upset, she will get upset. And AJ wants to know who's she, asking kind of loudly as Tess motions for him to be quiet. AJ shines his light up at the steel door above them. His flashlight is illuminating dirty black hair that is now lowering down through the grate. And we see the woman's clawed hand clutching a large glass baby bottle with a large rubber nipple attached at the top. It looks foul, like it's like unwashed and the liquid inside is miscolored. It's just so gross. The woman lowers the baby bottle into the hole towards AJ and motions for him to drink it. And he looks questioningly at Tess, who tells him to drink, and he refuses. The woman then offers the bottle to Tess, who approaches the bottle and drinks. The woman takes the bottle from Tess and points it back at AJ. She's reaching down into the hole, motioning for him to drink. And there's these long-running hairs hanging off the end of the nipple, and it's just, she's like waving it in his face. It's so disgusting. AJ refuses again, and he's looking away, and he's quietly groaning to himself. Tess pleads with him to please drink it, and she asks, "Don't you see? She just wants you to be her baby." AJ continues shining his light up at the grate above them before the woman. The character's official name is the mother, so we'll call her the mother from now on. The mother angrily pulls the baby bottle back up through the grate and briefly disappears into the dark before suddenly swinging the grate open and dropping down into the hole, slamming down like Spider-Man in front of AJ. Just goosh!
Fucking superhero landing.
Yeah, big time. And this woman is truly huge, long-limbed, stark naked and deformed, long black and gray, matted and stringy hair hanging down
exactly
from her
what's happened,
balding head. I bet you do. And so the woman approaches Tess and embraces her, and she's stroking her face and calling her baby. Baby, baby. As Tess sits frozen in fear and she's eyeballing AJ, and the woman's oily and matted hair hanging over Tess's face. Disgusting. AJ lets out the scared little yelp, and the mother quickly approaches him with a growl, and she grabs his face, and she begins babbling in his face. Blah, 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 blah. and there's spit flying from her enlarged lips, and her teeth are rotted and discolored and shark-like, and they're jutting out of her mouth. Tess watches fearfully as AJ suddenly yelps out. He's got this woman in his face. She's going, blah, 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 and he's like, bah! And quicker than we can realize what's happening, the mother yanks AJ up and out of that hole with her, and she's dragging him screaming into the darkness above, just like that. So she's quick and strong, fast. AJ's dropped his flashlight, and Tess now picks it up and begins examining the now open grate above her with the flashlight beam. And we cut to AJ being dragged on his back down the hall by the mother as he pleads and screams, and mother drags him into that room, the one that's all lit purple with the soiled blankets and the nursing video still playing on the TV, and she throws him down on the floor, and AJ lies helpless on his back, and he's trying to squirm away, and he's pleading, no, as the woman grabs him and drags him to herself, and she holds him close, face to face, and she touches his nose, and she goes, boop. We cut back to Tess.
Does she say boop?
She does. She goes, boop. Gets his nose. She taps it. Boop.
And he's like, what the fuck?
Uh-huh. And so we cut back to Tess, who's now pocketed this flashlight, and she's begun her attempt to scale the wall and exit the hole. And she finally manages it, and she begins to crawl out. And we cut back to the room with the soiled blankets, where the mother now sits cross-legged on the floor, and she's forcing AJ's head down into her lap as she holds her hands around his throat. And the nursing video is saying that nursing should be a pleasurable experience for the mother and its baby both, as the mother pulls her hair away from her saggy and veining breasts. And so we cut back to Tess. Dude.
Should've took the bottle.
Dude.
Should've took the bottle.
Should've took the bottle, bro. We cut back to Tess, and she's got AJ's flashlight. She's got her knife in hand, and she's wandering through the cavern halls as she suddenly hears AJ scream in the distance. And she approaches the purple glowing doorway of the nursing room as she hears AJ yelling, "Oh, fuck you," to the mother. We can hear AJ struggling as Tess approaches the doorway, and she peers in, and the TV is exclaiming that this is a time for mother and child to bond and share a tender and intimate moment.
Fuck you!
He's, oh, fuck you! And we see the mother forcing her breast into AJ's mouth, and he's gagging and screaming and pleading. And so the tables have surely been turned. This guy who's forced himself on woman, yes,
a woman is forcing herself
on him. And he can know what it's like to be a victim, to be brutalized like that. So she's shoving her tit in his mouth, and he is... Tess quietly passes by the doorway and down the hall. She's leaving him.
She's like, bye.
And she kicks the measuring tape loudly on accident. She's like, okay, she heard that. And she suddenly runs sprinting for the entrance, making her way up the steps and past the dungeon, down the long, dark hallway and into the basement, where she runs up the basement steps and she finds the door now locked. And Tess tries to open it, of course, to no avail. Because, again, he didn't prop that shit open. He just opened it and went in. She tries to open it. It doesn't unlock. And she briefly begins kicking it before running back downstairs. And she approaches that small basement window as we hear mother screaming from a short distance away. Tess begins breaking the basement window with her bare fists, smashing it open and crawling through the opening over broken glass onto the front lawn. And half her body hangs out into the daylight of the front yard. And we see someone run up and grab her, dragging her across the lawn, away from the window, just in time as mother's long, pale arms come clawing out of the window, reaching for Tess and barely missing her.
It's the homeless guy.
And we see it's the homeless man who was chasing Tess earlier, and he's now dragging her away from the window as she gasps and screams. The homeless man and Tess watch as mother pulls her hands back in and disappears back into the dark of the basement. Tess, now standing, is being pulled away by this homeless guy, and she tells him that there's someone still down there and they need to help him. And we cut back to the nursing room where AJ is getting up off the floor and he's coughing and gagging, and we can hear the buzz of a fly. It's just so gross. And back outside, Tess argues with the homeless man that they can't leave her friend, and yeah.
Okay,
But Tess has a heart. She's never met this guy, but clearly she's like, we gotta save him. The homeless man tells her she should count herself lucky and she never should have been in that house in the first place, and that it's a bad place and that the mother isn't even the worst thing in there. The homeless man is named Andre. He's played by James Butler. So he tells Tess that he lives by the water tower down the road, and he tells Tess to follow him. Tess says they need to call the police, and Andre counters that he doesn't have a phone. Tess pleads that mother is going to kill AJ and that they need to help. Andre tells her that the mother's going to come out of that house, and that she comes out at night and she'll be looking for Tess, and that Tess shouldn't come back, that it's time to leave now.
Oh, God.
Back in the caverns, AJ wanders through the halls using the flashlight on his phone to light the way. He comes to a break where he can either turn left or right, and in front of him on the wall, he finds a bell with a small rope attached, strung along the wall going down the hall. He follows that rope. He hears a distant screaming behind him and suddenly turns, and he's briefly panicking to himself before running back in the opposite direction. So he's following that rope along the wall, and he continues to follow it until he finds a closed door. AJ stops at the door, turning behind himself as he hears the creature growling nearby. AJ turns the flashlight from his phone in that direction, and it's illuminating the darkness, and then barely visible from the shadows, we see the outline of Mother approaching. She stands hesitantly watching AJ for a moment before retreating back into the dark. And AJ turns around, fuck this, and opens the door. So we cut to Tess, who has wandered through the abandoned neighborhoods and has found a gas station. She approaches the counter, and the counter is encased in glass, and she asks if they have a phone. And we cut back downstairs where AJ has entered a filthy and cluttered, dimly lit room. And there's garbage and bullshit everywhere. A couple of yellowing bulbs dimly light the room, and so AJ makes his way through, stepping over bottles and cans and garbage, and he finds a small TV, it's glowing blue, and next to it he finds a yellow floral sundress. It's the same sundress that pretty young gal was wearing when he came into her house and unlocked the bathroom. AJ picks up, and he's like, what the fuck? And he's looking at it, and there's a cough behind him, and AJ turns suddenly, seeing an old man gasping on his bed in the dark. AJ shines the yellow light from a nearby lamp, illuminating the old man, and it's Frank, present-day Frank, and he's gray, and he's shriveled, and he's coughing hoarsely. So we're in a bedroom of sorts, and AJ slowly approaches Frank on the bed, and he tells him that, dude, you scared the shit out of me. And behind AJ, the small TV glows blue on the shelf, and AJ gets a good look at Frank, who looks like he's on the edge of death, and AJ asks if he's okay. And we cut back to Tess outside of the gas station, and a patrol unit approaches, pulling up. And she runs to the driver's side door, and she puts her hands on the door of the frame of the door, and she goes, thank God! And it's two officers played by Derek Morse and Trevor Van Uden. The characters are just listed as Officer 1 and 2, so we're just going to call them Derek and Trevor.
Okay.
Right? Officer Derek is in the driver's seat as Tess approaches, and she puts her hands on the frame of the door, and she says, thank God you're here. And Derek immediately is like, ma'am, please take your hands off of the door. And she's like, there's a man being held prisoner, and he needs our help. And Officer Derek interrupts again, insisting that she please take her hands off of the door. He then asks her if she has any ID. She says, no, are you listening to me? I've been held prisoner. And Officer Derek asks, so you don't have any ID? And Tess says no. Derek looks at her judgmentally, and she tells him that she's not some crackhead, that she is a woman who has been held prisoner, and there's a man in serious danger right now. And Officer Derek looks skeptical at best. So we cut back to the interior of Frank's bedroom, who's eyeballing AJ from his bed, and he's coughing, and he motions for AJ to grab something from a nearby nightstand. AJ approaches the nightstand and unsuccessfully tries to figure out what Frank is asking for before telling Frank not to worry, that he's going to get them both out of here, that he's going to have the cops swarming this place, and that fucking thing is going to pay for what it's done.
Uh-oh.
Frank wordlessly eyeballs him, and the camera's slowly zooming in on him as he realizes that he is going to be totally screwed. We can see it in Frank's eyes. He's like, oh shit. Frank motions again for AJ to get something from the nightstand. AJ is unable to find what he's looking for, so he just picks up the entire nightstand and he places it next to Frank's bed. Like, here. Frank begins searching the nightstand as AJ begins searching the room looking for his phone. We cut to the exterior of 476 Barbary, where Officer Derek inspects the broken basement window from the yard, and Tess tells the officers that they're going to have to get the front door open. Derek says she doesn't have keys and she doesn't live here, so they're not going in. Tess pleads with Officer Derek that this is a crime scene and that woman has killed a man already and somebody could be murdered down there right now. Officer Derek tells her that no one's being murdered and the only crime he's seen is her breaking a window. Officer Trevor stands at the curb next to the patrol unit and calls to Derek, telling him, we've got shots fired on Midland. Officer Derek turns away from Tess and heads to the unit. Tess falls behind and asks, are you motherfuckers leaving? And Officer Derek and Officer Trevor get into the patrol unit. Tess chases after them, pleading and asking where they're going. They eyeball her wordlessly as they start the unit, driving down the road and leaving. Tess is left standing in the street, watching after them, shocked and crying to herself. Down in Frank's room, AJ has found a small shelf of VHS tapes next to the TV, each of them labeled with different titles like Brenda and Pregnant and Very Old and Very Fat and Elizabeth and Puker and Won't Stop Crying and Stephanie and Hitchhiker.
Oh my God.
All these different VHS tapes. And AJ turns his attention to the TV VCR combo, and a VHS sticks out of the VCR unit that reads gas station redhead. We see AJ's hand reach down and push the tape in before we cut back upstairs. The interior of the living room, as it's getting dark, the living room window suddenly shatters open and Tess crawls through, marching in and grabbing her keys off the table. We cut back down to AJ in front of the TV and he's lit by its glow, and we can hear screaming coming from the tape he's watching, and he looks mortified, and he turns it off and turns back to Frank, who lies on the bed still rifling through the nightstand. And AJ asks Frank, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And Frank continues searching as AJ tells him, "I'm talking to you." Frank pulls a small revolver out of the nightstand. We cut to Tess outside, entering her car with the keys and starting it. It is now night. She sits hesitantly in the driver's seat. Back down in Frank's bedroom, Frank is now pointing the gun at his own head. And we cut to the shot of AJ, who pleads, "No, no, 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 no," before we suddenly hear a gunshot. And so Frank has shot himself. We cut back to Tess in her car, her headlights flooding the back of AJ's pussy little Nissan Leaf as she begins to reverse backwards, turning the nose of her car to the front of the house. And so her headlights are now illuminating the front of the house. It's night now. And the front door suddenly comes crashing open as Mother comes screaming out into the night, running down the porch steps and towards Tess's car. Tess puts the car into drive and fucking guns it, hits this bitch, and crashes into her and pins her into the side of the house. Mother is angrily bashing and breaking the windshield before she starts slowing, and she's sadly staring Tess in the eyes as she loses consciousness, and Tess exits the vehicle. Back down in Frank's room, Frank lies dead on his bed. AJ takes the gun from him and begins making his way back through the caverns. Upstairs, Tess drags the dining room chair back to the basement door and props it open, and we cut to Tess heading down the stairs into the cavern. Tess paces through the dark, coming to the doorway of the purple-lit nursing room, and further down the hall in the darkness, Tess sees a floating white light. And Tess is standing there kind of staring at it for a second and says, "Hello?" before we hear a sudden gunshot. We see Tess lying on the floor, eyes open as we hear AJ approaching, going, "Oh fuck, I'm so sorry." And he shakes her face, and she slowly regains consciousness, and AJ wraps his arms around her and begins picking her up.
She says hello, and he shoots.
Mm-hmm. Well, as she goes, "Hello."
Oh, okay.
But still, he's a dick. So AJ,
Well, that was an accident, though.
It was an accident. AJ picks her up and he begins dragging her away, still apologizing to her as she begins to scream in pain. And we cut to the front yard of 476 Barbary. It's night. Tess's Jeep Cherokee is crashed into the front of the house, still smoking. AJ and Tess come stumbling out of the front door and onto the porch. Tess's arm is wrapped around AJ as he supports her. Tess's free hand clutches the gunshot wound in her stomach, and AJ's got the gun.
She's gonna die. She got a gunshot.
A gunshot wound in the stomach takes a long time to die from, apparently. Tess sees that Mother is no longer pinned between the car and the vehicle, and she's nowhere to be seen. AJ asks where the fuck she is, and Tess says she doesn't know. Tess asks if he has a car, to which he replies he does, but his keys are back down in the tunnels, and he's not going back down there. Tess tells AJ that she knows where to go, and they head down the road toward the water tower. Tess and AJ stumble along down the road before coming across Andre, who quietly bangs his fist on a fence, and he whisper yells, "Hey!" to them. Andre pulls up a section of the fence, and they follow him through. And we cut to the interior of this large and open, broken down building. It's essentially just 3 walls and a ceiling, and there's crumbling rock and dirt and concrete everywhere. Tess and AJ and Andre are all seated around a small fire. Andre can't believe that the Mother let AJ and Tess get away, and AJ asks what the fuck she is. Andre says she's a crazy lady that's been living in that house for 40 years or so now, that she was born there. AJ says that's impossible. I own that house. Nobody lives there. Andre counters that AJ may own the house on paper, but the Mother and her daddy live there and they've never left. And he explains that her dad used to bring women down there and started making babies with them, and babies with the babies. And so...
Yep. That's exactly what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and it reminded me of because he would take. It reminded me of the case because he would take these women down into his basement and he would do whatever he wanted with them.
Yep.
And hold them prisoner, and dude, so fucking horrible.
It's a big inbred situation.
And so through this conversation, we're understanding that the Mother is the result of decades of inbreeding from Frank. Andre acknowledges that Mother injured Tess, to which AJ replies that it was actually his fault and that they need to get Tess some help. Tess stresses that it was an accident, and Andre tells them both that they need to sit down and wait. AJ protests and says, "No, this is my fault." Andre says it doesn't matter whose fault it is, and AJ says, "Yes, it does, that he hurt somebody." And we get this great little monologue from Justin Long where AJ stares into the fire with a 1,000-yard stare, and he's speaking to Andre and Tess, but he's really talking to himself, debating about how he actually may really be a bad person, or maybe he's a good person who did a bad thing, and how he can't change what he's done, but he's going to try to fix it. And AJ turns to Tess and he tells them that's what he's going to do. He's going to try to fix it. Andre tells them that they can't leave here tonight because they'll get themselves killed, and that it's safest here with him. Come morning, they can head to town and find help. Tess asks Andre, how do you know that Mother won't come in here where you live? Andre says, shit, I've been living in this place more than 15 years, and she ain't never come in this motherfucker.
And then she does.
Mother, of course, comes crashing through the wall behind him, sending concrete rubble flying. Mother rushes to Andre, picking him up from behind and wrapping an arm around his throat. And with her other arm, she grabs him by the wrist and begins pulling his arm out of its socket. And we can hear bones and tendons and flesh ripping before Mother rips his arm off entirely, and she throws Andre to the ground as Tess screams, and AJ goes running off into the night ahead of her without her. AJ goes taking off. Mother begins beating Andre to death with his own arm. She's swinging wildly and screaming over and over.
You think you're safe, motherfucker.
This has been a long time coming. She beats him down with his arm, and Tess goes stumbling away, chasing after AJ. And the two of them come to a fence outside, and it's lined at the top with barbed wire. Realizing they can't climb over, they head for the nearby water tower as they hear Mother screaming behind them. AJ heads up the steps of the water tower in front of Tess, and she falls on the steps, and she pleads with him to please wait for her. AJ yells for her to come on, and he doesn't wait for her. He continues running up to the top without her, because he's a selfish asshole. Tess gets to her feet, and she's limping painfully up the steps behind AJ, and at the top of the water tower, AJ looks down and sees Mother at the bottom of the steps climbing up. AJ pulls the gun out of his pocket, but fumbles it and drops it over the edge of the water tower. And the gun goes crashing to the steps below where Mother passes by. AJ screams, "Fuck!" And Tess is on her knees, dragging herself to the top of the silo now. AJ backs away along the top of the silo, telling Tess there's nothing that they can do, and that Mother's going to get them, and that she's never going to stop. AJ stands wild-eyed, and he's thinking, and he's still holding that 1,000-yard stare. And then he tells Tess that he can get away, but she's going to have to slow her down. And he grabs Tess by the hair and yells at Mother, who now approaches at the top of the tower, and she's snarling at AJ. And he tells Mother to come get her baby, and he tosses Tess off the side of the tower.
What the
And we get this slow-motion shot of Tess slowly falling to the ground before cutting to her perspective as she falls, and we see the naked figure of Mother dive-bombing off the side of the tower and coming down, reaching for Tess. Mother zooms toward the camera as we cut to black. And then we cut to AJ, who's standing at the top of the water tower, and he peers over the edge. Mother and Tess lie on the street below, Mother having broken Tess's fall.
Oh my God.
As Tess lies unconscious on top of the Mother. AJ looks relieved, and he heads down the water tower steps, and he reaches the bottom, and he heads to the street, grabbing the gun before approaching Tess, who was unconscious on top of Mother. And he wakes Tess, asking her if she's okay and telling her that he's so sorry, and he had no choice, and he had no time to think. And AJ even begins to rationalize his actions with lies, just like last time, telling Tess that he didn't even let go and that she started to slip. The way that he apologized to that girl on the phone and the way he's apologizing to Tess now, he words it and justifies it in a way that it's not his fault. So he hasn't learned anything. He tells her, she started to slip. There's nothing he could do. He tells her she's going to be okay and begins picking her up before Mother suddenly sits up in the street, snarling and growling. She stands, and with her huge clawed hands around AJ's throat, who stands shocked, bug-eyed, and hopeless, she chokes him, and she's lifting him up into the air as her taloned thumbs slide up the side of AJ's face and into his eyeballs, and AJ's screaming as we get a nice close-up of his face as she's gouging his eyes out, and there's pink and white jelly spilling out of the sockets. Mother then rips his head in two like a watermelon.
Damn!
Throws his body to the ground.
Well, had it coming.
He had his chance at redemption. He didn't take it.
He had it coming.
He did. She throws his body to the ground. Tess lies on the ground, and she's bleeding from the gunshot wound in her stomach. Mother approaches Tess, and she's babbling, and she's sad, and she stoops down and hovers her hands over Tess's wound, and she's worried for Tess. Mother tries picking Tess up off the ground, but Tess screams in pain. Mother motions and points back toward the house down the street, babbling, and Tess tells her that she can't go back. Mother briefly tries picking Tess up again, who yells in pain again. So the mother babbles to Tess, as Tess pulls the revolver from her side, pointing it at Mother's face. And Mother doesn't resist, but lovingly caresses Tess's face, calling her baby. And Tess holds the gun to Mother's face. Mother calls her baby once more before we hear a sudden gunshot.
Oh my God.
And we cut to black.
It's kind of sad.
It is sad.
Because she's just a product of...
None of it's her fault.
Yeah.
It's not her fault that she's this way. This is how life turned out for her. So, gunshot. We cut to written and directed by Zach Kreger. And Be My Baby by the Ronettes comes onto the soundtrack. And we cut back and forth between our credits and a short montage of Tess, who gets up from the street, stumbling her way down the road and clutching her wound. And as she does so, the night turns to dawn and the sun begins to rise. She limps down the road, a survivor, victorious. And we cut to black. And that's Barbarian. Absolutely love this movie. It's a lot of fun. Please go check it out. It's streaming on HBO Max. You can rent it on Amazon.
Hulu.
Yep, Barbarian 2022.
Rent it on YouTube, too.
Barbarian 2022. Please go check it out. And that was Horror Reels.
Woohoo.
Woohoo. Where can the people find us on social media?
Okay, you can find us on Spotify, The Bone Barrel Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at The Bone Barrel Podcast. You can find us on Instagram. You can also find us on our Facebook group, The Bone Barrel Podcast. We also have our YouTube now, The Bone Barrel Podcast. And all these links are also in our link tree.
Yep, that is linktr.ee/bonebarrelpod.
And we thank you, our misfits in all things horror, for listening to another episode of The Bone Barrel Podcast. I'm Richard.
I'm Brian.
And this has been The Bone Barrel Podcast.